Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. My name is Liam, and if you're familiar with this show, you know that already. But what you might not know is we've got two great guests to break down UFC Vegas 79. I'm on vacation. I'm downstairs. I'm hiding away from everybody so we can bring a show to the people. No matter the hour, you guys know it's 12 o'clock midnight East Coast time, the night before the fight. But what are we doing? We're staying up a little late, trying to bring that content to you. And who do we got to do it? Some friends of the show that you know and love, returning guest, returning friend. You see his face on this channel frequently. The Jewish Bettor back in the building. Some people were getting after you in the comments, my man, but you were having your say. I love to see it. We love everybody that watches this show, but we also got to say, we do it our own way. Not everybody's going to love the way we conduct the show, but learn to love it or leave it. We have our process, our way of doing things, not going to change ourselves. We're going to try and be authentic to ourselves, not lie to you guys and bullshit who we are. And if my man is smoking a J while he's having the conversation, it just is what it is as far as I'm concerned. So welcome back, my brother. You're always welcome with or without. How are you?
Nah, that was crazy, man. Great intro. And you got to watch the pre thing before you guys, before, the stream starts, we get to be in the back. And my man Liam was finding a hiding place for this one, man. Dude was really getting dedicated for this stream for y'all. So the research has been done. Dude's on vacation, still putting in work. Appreciate the comments, but you see the shirt, what it says, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. But I appreciate all y'all. And for, this podcast, I won't be smoking. So, just for that one guy out there, yeah, I got to do it for you, man. I won't smoke this podcast. Promise you, bro.
A gentleman and a scholar, and guys, making his sophomore appearance on the show. We've been excited to conduct another collaboration with our guy. He's been crushing it. I think it was that 5-unit max bet on Ciryl Gane ITD, brought a little bit more prominence to the name. He put, the conviction behind it, the take, the breakdown, and it was all really spot on. So wanted to give our guy that credit and that shout. And welcome back, Finesse the Books. How are you, my man?
What's good, my brother? JB, you gotta love him. You gotta love JB, right? Just have to. So, yeah, I'm glad to be back, bro. I've said this to you every time we've kind of interacted. I appreciate the work that you do. I was a fan before anything. So, piggyback off what JB said, this man is on vacation working. He working on his day off, right? So that's the crazy part. So, for the people, for free, gearing you up for the fight. So, I just broke down this card, earlier today, and I'm sick in the head. So, I want to do it all over again and continue to talk fights. I love this shit. I absolutely love this shit. So let's do it. I'm excited.
Can't think of two better guys to be doing it with. We got 20 people rocking with us live as well. One of the sharpest chats in the game. So appreciate everybody who's rocking with us. Let's start, as we always do, with the first fight of the night. We got Monserrat Rendon taking on Tamires Vidal. It's a women's bantamweight fight, and it's going down, between two women that both have a lot to prove, let's say, in their career, right? Tamires Vidal is a girl that's fought more UFC-level fighters, but last time out, I think she was closely lined with Ramona Pascal, and she gets the win there, gets the first-round finish. Impressive stuff, no doubt, but Ramona Pascal, hardly a UFC-level fighter. On the other side of things, Rendon, what does she have? 4 professional fights under her belt, 2 wins by split decision. Nothing that's jumping off the paper. It's like, wow, this 34-year-old is really going to set the world on fire. But you also look and just say, how good is Tamires Vidal? She was getting dog walked by Aline Perez on the regional scene before she got that DQ. A little bit of good fortune went her way from the over-aggression of Aline Perez, but it looked like her skills maybe were a little deficient there. Maybe the heart wasn't what you wanted to see from her in that spot. So a couple glaring red flags, I'd say, on both of these women. And that's why it's starting off the night, right? That's why this isn't a featured bout that's getting a lot of play and getting a lot of coverage. These are two women that sincerely have a lot to prove. So we'll start with my guy, Finesse. How do you feel about this matchup? Do you feel like there's any betting value to be had?
Yeah, I do not. I'm a bad person to start with because this is a complete pass for me. These first 2 WMMA fights, I think, are the definition of passes, in my book at least. I think Vidal is aside, but laying minus 250 is out of the question for me. Like you said, more question marks and more red flags than anything else. So complete pass for me. Yeah.
I can't blame you at all. I just feel like this is a fight where unless you feel like you've got an edge, you don't really need to force a bet here. Now, we are talking about a plus 200 type indication in a women's MMA fight between two girls with a lot to prove. So for me, that's instantly going to make it a dog or pass money line situation. Do I want to get cute with a prop or something like that? Probably not. So yeah, to your point, looking more like a pass is probably appropriate in this spot, unless you feel like you've got a good edge. The Jewish Bettor, my brother, how do you feel, my man? You feel like you got an edge here?
Yeah, so I did things like I kind of do this every week, but I did it more so this week without like looking at the lines per se. But I kind of tried to line the fights myself a little bit beforehand. So I watched some of both these girls' fights, and I'll say I'm really not impressed with either or. I will say that, and I think that's pretty obvious on paper. It's like everybody kind of knows that neither of these girls are world beaters or maybe even not like really UFC level. The only reason they're UFC level is because it's like low level women's MMA. UFC will sign them, especially like Brazilian or Mexican prospects. Will come in and they'll get this spot. But Rendon, 34-year-old debutante, so that's probably going to make her an automatic underdog. I'm assuming off the rip. Vidal has the UFC experience, fought the UFC competition, even got a finish in the UFC in her last fight, a big one that people might remember. So I originally had her lined as the favorite, but skill for skill, I had this one more towards plus 150 for Rendon. I thought that was a more fair line for her. When you watch Rendon, I think people are saying, she's awful, she's not that good, she's going split decision with these 4-4 fighters. But look a little bit more into Cloudy. I think. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
You're back, brother.
Okay. Cloudy, like I was saying, you go back and look at her losses, it mostly comes from wrestling takedowns and people who are trying to take her down, whereas Rendon kind of just sat there and boxed with her, gave her game, and Cloudy's a long, rangy fighter who could be tricky on a night for a lower level. Like, I think Cloudy could give Vidal problems if she's not sitting there grappling. She might knock her out, bro, and let's not get too ahead of ourselves. It's still low-level WMMA, but I think, if I got to go with power, I'll give it to Vidal. Grappling, maybe I'll give a slight edge to Vidal. Speed, I'll give to Rendon. And just IQ in general, I'll give to Rendon. I think she has decent cardio as well. I've seen her go 3 rounds. Didn't look like she was super gassed, whereas Vidal, she's a little pudgy, kind of slows down as the fight goes along. And I'm going to be taking a shot here on Rendon at, this big plus number. Give me a small shot on the WMMA underdog, and I have made this mistake a little bit before, I believe, with you on the Karine Souza or versus Silva versus Ketlin Souza. You take kind of a lower level WMMA versus the girl that you think is bad, but the girl that has UFC experience, the Brazilian, that they're probably trying to push, because like Dana said it in the Dana White Contender Series interviews. He's not looking for a 34-year-old prospect or debutante. That's not something he's necessarily looking for. So that immediately raises a red flag for me. But with all that being said, a little bit of a long-winded breakdown for the first fight. Such a shitty fight as well. Give me Rendon. I like her at this plus 200 number.
Okay, so there you have it, an official play here on the underdog side. And, one thing I noted, right, I do social media breakdowns every week. Some people think it's not worth shit, and that's just fine, but I also think I like to look at it as just a gauge of like, do people actually know who this person is? Do they care? If somebody's got 1 million Instagram followers, they're probably going to get some respect in the betting market too, just like by and large. Whereas if they don't have anybody backing them, if they don't have anybody that knows their name, they're not going to see that kind of betting volume just as a rule in principle. So when I'm looking at a fight like this and I'm trying to establish, could there be value? There's not many underdogs on this card that are A-sides that have bigger social media presences. But one thing that did stand out to me, and I'm just sharing this from my premium notes, is like, these are 2 girls that are at virtual parity. Like they have the same amount, basically. Vidal has like 400 more, but she had a UFC fight already. And she's fought way more relevant fighters, had a longer professional career, and they've got the same following. So nobody gives a shit about Vidal. It's the bottom line, right? The same amount of people care about her as Rendon. So that's the one thing that makes me think the UFC probably doesn't give a shit who wins this fight. They just booked it because they have 2 girls under contract. Why Rendon is here is the thing that is kind of puzzling to me. Why was she not on a UFC Noche, for example? But when I do look at this fight, and I just say to myself, potentially the bigger girl in a fight that could just end up being, lower volume if there's not a finish and just 2 girls that dance on the outside, I think it has to be dog or pass from a money line situation. I know a lot of people this week on Twitter that were saying, how is Vidal not a lock in this situation? But I just didn't see Rendon being super vulnerable on the mat. What I saw on an Instagram stock, I believe she's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I don't think she's like a complete fish. she was being announced in some of those fights as a jiu-jitsu fighter, which I think was maybe some of that mind games. Like, I'm going to announce myself as a jiu-jitsu fighter, so don't try and take me down. But still, like, she was announced as a jiu-jitsu fighter. I saw pictures of her in a brown belt. Unless she's faking it, I think that she's been advancing, working in the gi. So I think it's an interesting fight to either take the dog, pass, or look at the prop market here. Next up, let's move to another fight that is lower level women's MMA, let's say. I believe she's just going by Mizuki these days, taking on Hannah Goldy. And this is a fight where Hannah Goldy's certainly been the more active party, but the more fights overall is with Mizuki. In a way, she's still on the right side of 30 years of age here, coming off of some surgery, some long layoff as well. I believe 3 years out of the octagon. But I think people are forgetting that she was favored to beat Amanda Lemos the last time she was here. I've heard a lot of people kind of dogging her and what she's capable of. I know she had a close fight with Wu Yanan as well. So she's not a world beater, but she got the win in that fight. Wu Yanan fights close with a lot of girls that she loses to, in fairness. And then you look at the fight where she goes against Lemos. A lot of girls get finished by Lemos. Marina Rodriguez, who's in the featured bout of the evening, got finished by Lemos in brutal fashion. And people are just not giving her any credit for making it the full 15. So I just think of this as like, who would the UFC prefer wins here? I don't think they give a rat's ass about Hannah Goldy. Hannah Goldy is one of these girls who has the social media side, no doubt about it. She's got a big following, but I just don't know that people care. I feel like she's got a social media following outside of fighting, maybe from the horn dogs within the community, if you know what I'm saying. But I just don't know that that's translating to real fight fans are tuning in to see what Hannah Goldy's going to pull off on a Saturday night. So for me, it just seems like a fight where I would be looking at, again, Mizuki in a way, props, or just passing in this fight. She's coming back off a long layoff. Maybe smarter to just, data gather here. But as far as I'm concerned, I think Mizuki's going to win this fight. I think she comes from a higher pedigree. Also, I might be in New Jersey tonight, but it's New York in the building. She's training at Renzo Gracie in New York City. She's training with Matt Serra and the crew, Ray Longo and those guys. I think that she's going to be the side here personally. But again, it's a big favorite price in a fairly low-level WMMA fight with girls that have some questions to answer. So I'm not laying minus 300 Mizuki either, but just feels like she's going to win this fight to me. We'll mix things up by kicking it to my guy, Jewish Bettor. How do you feel about this one, brother?
No. I think Mizuki Inoue is going to win this fight. Do I think there's value on her line? Well, let's look into that because that's a different thing, right? She's coming off a big knee surgery, right? That's something that always kind of captures my eye because you never know exactly how the person's going to come back, especially, like knee surgery, like that's what I keep hearing, right? But does knee surgery actually take, what happened that it took 3 years for her to come back? Because that's the question that I really want to know is what was the necessity for the 3-year layoff? And I feel like that's a question people really need to be asking that I haven't really gotten the answer to myself yet personally. But that being said, I think Mizuki's the real martial artist. She's the girl that actually is thinking about fighting, whereas Hannah Goldy is kind of, the OnlyFans fade is what we call it, the OnlyFans fade. Let's rock with the home team. Like you said, she's training out of the Law MMA, the New York City. Got 3 East Coast motherfuckers. We might not all be in the East Coast at this very moment, but it's still in the blood. So I got to go with Inoue here. I'm not going to be betting a minus 300 woman MMA favorite ever coming off a 3-year layoff. And the last thing I'll say is, how much do we take this inactivity into effect? Because 3 years is a long time. Last week we saw 6 years, and that ain't go so well. So I'll be taking Inoue here. I think she gets it done by either armbar or decision.
And that's the thing. I think it's going to be fresh in people's mind. Like, this guy came back off a long layoff and he looked like shit. So I'm going to fade this girl. And I feel like I think it was my guy, Jake Fagan. Want to shout him out. I think he mentioned that in my comment section too. I completely agree. I just feel like those are the kind of things that it will stay with you. Like what we just saw most recently. And I feel like in WMMA, when you have somebody who's less than 29 years of age coming back, it's so much different than Alex Reyes, 36-year-old welterweight coming back in a fight against a guy who they're setting up to destroy him, So that's the kind of thing where I want to take that into account. Also, as I kick this over to our guy, Finesse, I just want to shout out Lenny with the $5 dono. Says, Liam, my guy, just showing love. What an absolute blessing from you, brother. Trying to kick it to you live here and break down these fights. So just knowing that there's people out there trying to show love, rocking with us, it's a big blessing, my man. Finesse, how do you feel about this fight? Do you feel like there's any betting value to be had, brother?
I do not personally. I'll close out the little East Coast triangle we got going on. I mean, Mizuki is going to win this fight. I think she has the potential to actually cover this price. So I can't say it's a terrible price. Getting minus 330, minus 340. I think she can win dominantly off Hannah Goldy. You guys broke the fight down beautifully, so I won't add too many red flags. Just like I said about the first fight, the 3-year layoff. Yeah, she can come out and look impressive, and I expect her to do so. But I can't bet on that. But I think the UFC is giving her, as about as a cupcake matchup as she can get in this division. So Hannah Goldy's not good. She's 1-3 in the UFC. The one win is against, a girl with a losing record. So I'm just not interested at all. So first two fights are a complete pass for me. I promise I got stuff to say, just not in the first two. But yeah, I expect Mizuki to win this fight. Even looking on DK, even her point spread minus 3.5 is minus 170, right? So that's kind of crazy. I wouldn't mind that if that was more even money around that situation, because I do think she's very live for a finish, like JB was saying. So yeah, nothing for me officially betting wise.
If I was to get involved with this fight, one thing I just wanted to peep in the prop market was the ends by submission here. Guys, when you look at Hannah Goldy, she got dropped in one of her fights, got the submission off of her back. I think that's her only UFC win. This is from my memory, right? I looked into this earlier in the week. I'm just trying to pull from memory, but I believe that that's her only UFC win, right? She's got a pretty dangerous armbar series, but she's not a very comprehensive fighter, right? She looked completely lost on the feet against Molly McCann. But Molly McCann is a primary striker coming out there to try and put on a show, get the spinning stuff going, all this stuff. Whereas I feel like Mizuki's going to try and implement her grappling here. But it's WMMA. It's banana peel territory with the line, this kind of thing. If she was to lose, how does she lose here? Does she get knocked out by Hannah Goldy? I don't see that. Does she get decision by Hannah Goldy? Even that, I feel like it's possible, but I feel like that's a little bit harder to envision. So for me, I feel like Hannah Goldy, by me miss submission, is her path here more often than not. And I think that's how she's kind of being priced by odds makers as well. So you're getting a very similar price to Hannah Goldy on the money line for the fight ends by sub. And you're getting maybe an 80-cent discount on Inoue sub. So instead of getting the minus 300 and limiting yourself to just one chalk favorite outcome at a plus 330, you buy down to a plus 250. You cover both girls' primary path to a finish at a big plus money number. That and the fight not to go the distance / the under that Kristen was shouting out, that would kind of be my look here. If I was to get involved, kind of contrarian violence, if somebody was to come back from 3 years and kind of just have a really flat performance and look off, maybe they just get submitted. Maybe they make a critical mistake. Maybe they panic because they haven't been out there in a while. And I think we've seen a number of examples of that happening before. So for me, I like big plus money numbers. I like to look for fights to end by sub. And people always tell me I'm looking for it too much. But then a night like the Contender Series happens this last week, and we're hitting the exact fighter and the ends by sub multiple times in the evening, because that's what you're playing here. And if you guys think that it doesn't make sense to cover both outcomes, think about the fact that Greg Velasco, plus 500 underdog, took Gaziev's back, right? And I said that the ends by sub at plus 360 when Gaziev sub is plus 420, because Velasco is an active guard player off his back. And what happened? He took the guy's fucking back. He almost submitted him in the first round. So I just think that these are the things that you always want to look for long term. Why would I give myself one out when I can have two for a slight discount? And it's still plus money. It's still a nice return on investment, but I could give myself more outs. That's what I'm always looking for, trying to spit a little game here as we move to the next fight, guys. In the heavyweight division, we've got Jake Collier taking on Muhammad Usman. And I'll tell you what, one thing that surprised me coming into this fight week is Jake Collier is actually in better shape for this fight. Now, I'm not going to be like a lot of people and get out over my skis and say, like, this is the greatest shape I've ever seen a fighter in. Like, holy hell, Jake Collier should be on Muscle and Fitness magazine. But I just look at him and I say, yo, clearly the guy put in more work for this camp than he has for the previous camps. Guy keeps showing up at 265. He shows up at 255. That tells you he did something different. He put in a harder degree of work here. Potentially, he's trying to set himself up to have a cardio advantage in this fight. And here's the other thing. Initially, my gut said Usman here, right? And the reason being is I think he's a way better athlete. I think he's got more power naturally in his hands. I just think of him as a guy that, like, if he was to touch you, you're more likely to go down than if somebody like Jake Collier. I feel like I could spar with Jake Collier for, 45 seconds before I go down. I feel like if Usman hits me one time, I'm dead. That's just the way I feel looking at it as a viewer. So I'm like, I feel like this guy Usman's going to drop him with a jab that nobody sees coming, and just like the guy dies. That was how I felt about it. But then I started to look back at some of these results, and like, You look at Jake Collier, he's not good. I'll still argue that to my death. The guy stinks. But Usman's not good either. And he has been fighting guys that are pretty stylistically favorable. And I do think that this is another attempt by the UFC to do that. Jake Collier's not that good. But if he shows up in a little better shape here and Usman's not able to get off on his game, we have seen him slow down in the past. The last time he was favored to win a fight, he did lose to Brandon Sales. That was not in this organization. I've speculated that he might be on PEDs since he came to the UFC. Don't sue me. I'm just guessing. But it looked like he had slightly better cardio. It looked like he was showing up in a little better shape to me. He actually showed up a little bit leaner, I felt like, in some of these UFC fights, not as muscle bound and looking a little bit more cut. And I think that's to his benefit. You don't want too much muscle. You don't want too much fat. You want your body to be carrying around the optimal amount of stuff for it to perform at its best. And I just feel like Usman's probably a touch closer to that than Collier still, but Collier just has more martial arts skills. Like if you fight at 185, you have to know how to fight. And if you fight at heavyweight, you could suck for your whole career and make a career of it. So that's just kind of the way it is. You could just touch people. You can knock people out. You take somebody down. They look like Chase Sherman off their back. It's all good. You know, like you could find wins in the heavyweight division. And the other thing that tells me Collier is not like a guy the UFC gives a shit about is that he got robbed blind against Andrei Arlovski. It cost me a lot of fucking money. So I'll never forget it. He won 3 rounds to 0. I won't hear it another way. I rewatched it. He won 3 rounds to 0. You look at the stats. He won 3 rounds to 0. It was 3 rounds to 0, guys. So you look back at that. They robbed him blind. They don't give a shit about this guy. But do they care about Usman? They're kind of just burying him on these prelims. You know, they're not really promoting him too much either. They're not moving him up the card. I think they might know he's not that good, so they can't really go that far with him. So for me, I don't know what to make of this one. You know, having him go out there and beat a Tafa brother, I feel like that was putting him in the right promotional situation. Now they're putting him against a guy who's, you know, on the border of a pink slip. So no doubt they're trying to give him a winnable fight. But it just feels like this one's going to be a little bit harder and you got to pay a steeper price for it. So for me, I'm leaning more towards the fight not to go the distance. You know, seems like Collier's pretty insistent on that. The one danger is, though, if he shows up in better shape, it might be to try and just gas this guy down the stretch, force the fight to go a little bit longer, outwork him. So those are my concerns. But I kind of just lean instinctually towards this fight not going the distance. 2 guys that are both not that good, huge defensive liabilities. And I think that both of them are liable to gas out down the stretch in this fight. So that could turn into the sloppy heavyweights rolling along the side of the octagon, but that also could turn into somebody just getting brutally knocked out or taken to the ground. I don't think either one of these guys has a lights out chin. I know that he's gone the distance a couple times, Collier, but most of that was with low-level heavyweights. Tom Aspinall said, hold this knee to the body and sit down, young man. So I think that the UFC's tried to get this guy killed a number of times. I don't think they give a shit about him. But in this kind of low-level fight, 80% of the Tapology votes on Usman, and the line's not moving. It's moving the other way. Just some things that spook me on this fight. So I'm staying off it. I'm curious what you think about this one, Finesse.
Yeah, interesting fight. I was telling JB this back when we were backstage before the show. I never thought the day would come, ever, where I put my hard-earned money. I work for this money to put my hard-earned money on Muhammad Usman, especially as a favorite. You know, if you're getting plus 200, plus 250, that's one thing. But best line I'm seeing right now is minus 136, and I'm taking Muhammad Usman. Neither of these fighters are good, right? So if you've never watched UFC before, or you're just getting into the sport and you're expecting me, oh, he's betting Usman, Usman's gonna cruise. It's not that type of party. It really is not. Usman is bad, but Jay Collier is worse. So, you know, great breakdown, as always. You mentioned that Collier is coming in lighter for this fight, almost 10 pounds lighter. Probably wants the speed, wants the cardio. His cardio is a major issue. Glass Cannon, 4 to 5 minutes of cardio. It shocked me if he has 7.5 minutes of cardio. So probably trying to improve in those areas. I just hate that he's doing this in this matchup. Still looks like the bigger man. You watch them face off. Still looks like the bigger man, a little bit taller. But Usman's a tank. Usman's going to be stronger. Like you said, is more athletic. You know, Collier comes out fast in round 1, throws the big hooks, high volume, pressure fighter in round 1. All of those things subside after round 1. He's no longer throwing volume. All he has to offer after round 1 is a jab and push you up against the fence. That's all the man does. So, you know, I think the clinch work and the pushing up against the fence, I think is going to be really, really hard in this matchup. I think Usman can dominate those spots. We've seen him fight. A lot of the minutes, majority of rounds are spent him just kind of holding guys up against the fence, outpowering them, out muscling them, out athleting them up against the cage, and kind of winning greasy fights that way. I think that's going to be extremely easy versus Collier. Collier just has nothing, a complete fade for me. As I can't take any positives away from watching his tape before, watching his tape again. I guess he's live for a round one knockout. I guess I see some people taking that angle, but Usman's pretty tough. He looks kind of noodly out there, right? He's always, he fights like an athlete. He fights like a football player. So he's always noodly. It might seem like he's hurt at times, but he's shown to be pretty durable. Only got sub once in his career. Only finished. And they're both guys are the same age, but a lot less tread on Usman's tires, right? Only 12 pro fights. Started fighting professionally only 2020. So yeah, a lot less tread, more athletic, and I think he has just enough in just enough categories to win this fight and possibly dominate this fight. I wouldn't be surprised. So, I see some people taking some shots on Collier, and more power to you. You do what you want with your money. But I think those people are absolutely insane. That's just me. Even if you think Collier is the side, I can't envision putting money on him at all. So I may be wrong. Collier may win this fight, but give me Muhammad Usman pretty confidently too, because that's the only way I'd put my money on this type of fight. I think Usman wins. They had the little beef at the weigh-in too, talking about brothers. Just because your brother could fight doesn't mean you can fight. I think that's just more bulletin board material for Usman. Don't really put a lot of stock into that, but I think that's worth mentioning. So, yeah, give me Usman minus 136 on the money line. Usman, my decision is plus 200. I think that's his most likely path, even though I think Usman can finish. I like those two plays. Usman by decision, plus 200. Usman money line, minus 136.
Fair enough. And Jewish Bettor, how do you feel about this one, brother? You got any betting leads here?
Yeah, for sure. So like he said before the show, we kind of talked a little bit, so he knows what I'm about to say. So I'll let the cat out of the bag right now. I'm on the other side, bro. I'm on Jake Collier here, and I'm going to give you guys my reasoning. So like I was talking about earlier when I had lined these fights previously, I had Jake Collier as a favorite, actually. I thought he should be the favorite here. Just going back at Muhammad Usman's career when he got into the Ultimate Fighter, let's look at those matchups, right? Mitchell Seep, where, Finesse kind of just brought this up. Seep was kind of trying to do the same thing and get in his head a little bit. And it seemed to make Usman fight a little bit emotionally. His corner, Juliana Pena, had to calm him down a little bit, get him back to get into the plan, which was, stay on the outside, get this guy, and outstrike him, use his athleticism, which he could possibly do here. But I don't know, man. I can't rate that win. We all just saw the comments, so we're all giving it a little bit of laughs. Stop fat hate. But he does look a little bit slimmer here. And then the next fight, I don't even know if he won that fight, man, versus that Mexican dude on the Ultimate Fighter, who hasn't even fought since. He's like a 4-0 record. I don't remember the guy's name, Eduardo something. Wasn't the best look for me. Yes, and that dude, man, he was super unathletic himself. Like, these dudes were almost fatter than Jake Collier. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, but they legitimately were, bro. And this dude is
They were never middleweights. That's what you could tell about those guys.
100%, bro. And like Collier, for what he has a little bit of speed on the hands. I think his stand-up is a little bit crisper. I think Usman, at some points, he feels uncomfortable in his stand-up. Sure, Tafa's a great kickboxer, bro, but he was absolutely making Tafa look like a genius with his striking defense. Like, his chin's just straight out in the air. The way he throws punches just like doesn't even make sense to me. Literally, when I would teach somebody to throw a punch, that is the last way I would teach them to throw a punch. The way Muhammad Usman throws, and I think the thing that gets Collier tired actually is the grappling. All that back and forth motion. We saw it kind of in the Huggy Bear fight. He took him down. He should have finished him there. Another ref stops that fight, right? And winds up just having a complete cardio dump. Loses the Huggy Bear. Really bad look. And I think a lot of people were on him there, and a lot of people are going to have a sour taste in their mouth from that fight. And that's something that they remember about Collier, where they're going to be like, man, I'm never putting a dollar on this guy a day in my life. But we got to remember that's a different spot. That's as a minus 400. We're getting him as an underdog here. So as bad as the cardio is, I don't really think Usman's cardio is great. I think Usman's going to be wrestling a lot, and I think when Usman wrestles, he gets tired which we saw kind of in the Brandon Sales fight. You know, he does a little bit of grappling, winds up getting rear naked choke by a guy who shouldn't, who shouldn't be getting that victory as a big underdog. He was a minus 1,400. Like Liam said, that was the last time he was a favorite. Every other time you're kind of getting him as a dog. And now let's talk about the two last wins, which are kind of impressive, right, in a way, especially the last one, in my opinion. The Paga one, I thought he was losing until he wasn't. He got the swift knockout, which is possible with Usman, but I don't think he's some power puncher, man. Like, honestly, like I said, his technique isn't really that great with the punches. I feel like he just caught Paga on the right day. And, Paga's another slow, kind of unathletic dude, same kind of style. I'm just trying to make an argument for Collier here. Like, as Finesse said, he's not the greatest fighter either, so not going to be betting a house on this one. But I do think Collier does have some value on his line. I think he has the more experience. He's fought, like, longer. He's debuted earlier. Like you said, this dude started in 2020. I just think the wealth of experience for Jake Collier, the higher level competition is going to get him. I can't believe I'm saying that at a heavyweight fight, but it's true. Is going to get him the victory here. So give me Collier for the value.
Well, there you have it, guys. We've got split opinions here. I always say there's more than one way to break down a fight, right? There's going to be sharp dissension on a lot of fights. Look at this line, minus 140, plus 120. That would indicate to me that they're definitely booking some two-way action here. But I just have some concerns about the way this is lined, right? Even the way it's positioned on the card. You look at the fact that there's two really big favorites and then one favorite that's like, a playable price. That almost makes me nervous about it. But in any case, I think somebody else made a point that had stuck in my head as well. And I'm trying to just pull that up from the chat real quick. Oh, where did it go? Yeah, Kadesh Dean said tough winner versus Collier. Wonder who wins that. That for me was like my gut level feel here. Was just like, who would the UFC prefer if they win? They definitely prefer if the tough fighter won, I feel like. But it's also a guy that among the tough fighters, I feel like he's not the one they are looking to market. Look at where Bryan Battle is on the card. Look at where Usman is on the card. And I think that tells you a lot about how they performed in the UFC as well. They give you the opportunities, and what you do with them is up to you, right? So like you go out there, you turn in a pretty boring ass decision against a low level fighter who's got a kickboxing background, like you said, made him look pretty good on the feet. So it's not to say that you can't go out there and out wrestle somebody, but it is to say if you do that, you're going to be lower on the card. You're going to have certain kind of caps on your growth. It's going to be a harder climb to the title. Whereas somebody like Bryan Battle, you keep getting fun finishes and going out there putting on a show. You get main cards. You get these kind of opportunities. So a couple things I think to look at in terms of how these tough fighters are being booked. Juliana Miller, where was she? She wasn't being featured on the main card. She's being buried on the prelims to lose. So that's another thing where I just find it mildly concerning. But I think overall, greasy fight. Pick'em seems appropriate to me. I'm leaving my hands off it unless I get involved in that total. Like I said, the under is tempting to me, but again, it hasn't moved as much as I would have thought. So if that remains at that like plus money tag, I'll probably just leave it alone. But if it moves market wide and I can get a stale number as it's dropping, I'll probably take that because I kind of feel like that. Want to shout out to Man of the Library for the dono as well. So 2 donos today. You guys are absolutely blessing it. I'm literally not lit. This is the light of my computer, guys. I was sitting in a garage here. The lights went out. I don't know what happened. So if they come back on, great. If not, we're going to keep rolling with the punches because that's what we do. Next up, we got Jacob Mamba Malkoun. He's taking on Cody Brundage. He's the biggest favorite on the card, guys. This is a fighter who's never been favored before in the UFC. He's the biggest favorite on the card. So right off the rip, you'll never see me playing those money lines in those kind of contextual situations. That being said, do I think he is a deserved favorite here? I do, because he's a guy that has a clear process for winning fights, whereas I would describe Cody Brundage as a self-immolator. I feel like a lot of his problems are self-imposed. I feel like he's an uncomfortable fighter from the rip, so I feel like as soon as the fight starts, he's like nervous, a lot of tension, and he's like a spring that's fully loaded. He's like Jose Aldo without all the plus-level attributes, right? It's like he's just sitting there like fully cocked the whole time. And I feel like sometimes that leads to, springboard knockout against Tresean Gore that frankly I never saw coming at all. But a lot of times that leads to gassing out in the first round, in the second round, not looking good, making bad decisions, right? Panicking. Why do you pull guillotine on the best grappler in the division, arguably? Because you're panicking. There's no other reason. Like, you don't do that when you're clear and sound of mind. You're not like, here, let me put myself on bottom against a prolific top player. So I just think of Cody Brundage as a guy who's unreliable, who makes bad decisions in the octagon, who's a little bit sketchy. But at plus 500, the question you always have to ask yourself is, how wrong could I be? Because at a certain point, it is a cage fight, right? And I always talk about, for me personally, everybody, your mileage may vary. I put a puncher's chance at about a 15% clip in MMA, generally speaking. That's just the way it is. It's a crazy game. You go out there, how many times have we seen Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic? He throws a leg kick, the guy steps back, my knee's gone, thanks for playing, goodbye. Sometimes you could have a perfect read on the fight. Some people would argue Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez. I would say it's a submission attempt. They would say it's an injury. Okay, no problem. It's like sometimes these things happen in MMA. So how big does your margin have to really be to have an edge? So I talk about the fact that like 15% of the time, it could be a knockout. It could be an injury. It could be a black hole event. It could be a bribe, a fix. All right, let's account that 15%. That's about plus 500 every time. So it's like, I think that's like the floor of most fighters in the UFC. And Cody Brundage has proven some knockout equity, some submission equity. It's not a complete fool in every position. Even some decision equity. He's not good in decisions. He's not reliable in decisions, but he's not floundering to the point where he's got 0% chance. So I do think of this as a wide line, because Jacob Mamba Malkoun, not known for being a prolific finisher, not known for having these, super plus level attributes that's why he's an underdog in every fight. But he's very consistent and he goes out there and delivers wins. And, he's been providing a great monetary return for his backers. So eventually the bill comes due, right? It can't be plus 130 anymore when he's fighting Cody Brundage. So I think that this is way too wide for Jacob Malkoun. But I also think that Jacob Malkoun is the most live he's ever been to finish a fight, because sometimes it's about you and what you do, and sometimes it's about your opponent and what they do. And I think that Cody Brundage self-immolates. And if you thought he had a lot of pressure on him before, this is the last fight on his contract. He's as good as fired already. If he wins this fight by boring decision, he's probably fired. If he goes out there and shoots 50 takedowns, he's probably fired. Like, there's just not that much upside. So he's got to have a perfect fight. He's going to have a lot of pressure on him. Sometimes pressure makes diamonds. A lot of times with Cody Brundage, it makes coal. So I'm not thinking he's going to have a stellar performance here, but I am thinking that the under is very live. I think he puts a lot of pressure on himself. I think he's a killer be killed fighter. So for me, I just feel like Malkoun's got a good opportunity to finish here. But if Brundage wins, what is he going to out-wrestle Malkoun for the full 15? I don't see that personally. I've seen this guy go out there and get out-wrestled by Nick Maximov and not look that good down the stretch. Granted, it was on short notice, but that's what I've seen. I've seen him go out there and get out-wrestled by other guys in the UFC. Michal Oleksiejczuk was having his moments in the wrestling and the grappling. It's like, my brother in Christ, it's going to be a long climb. So I just feel like this guy is not a guy that I'm looking to get behind long-term. Cody Brundage, I don't believe in betting on him. But I do think very wide money line price. Can't get involved on the Malkoun side unless I was playing a prop here. And for me, I just think that I'd be more inclined to look towards the under, a little bit of violence here. Curious what you guys think, though. This is a contentious fight on the internet, I feel. I think a lot of people are going to be on Malkoun decision. I think that that's going to be a pretty, common pick this week, let's say, because it's what we've seen. But I also just think Cody Brundage, a guy that last time went to decision. So I think that's going to be fresh in people's brain. I think most of the time, that's not what he does. So Jewish Bettor, we'll send it to you first. What do you think about this one, brother?
Yeah, so Malkoun, I kind of like a lot of the things he does, but there's also some things that I don't like. He's not really a guy who's going to be throwing combos out there to set up his takedowns. He's usually kind of jab, low kick, head on the outside single, but he does keep his opponents down when he gets there, and he's heavy from top control. Obviously, we kind of know we're getting in Brundage here, but the thing I will say is he's hurting a lot of his opponents. He hurt Rodolfo Vieira in that spot, almost finished him before, like you said, self-emulating. Man, you use some big words, dude. Nah, I'm joking with you. Get out of here with them big words.
Self-immolating. It means lighting himself on fire, okay? That's it.
Dude, he's going to light himself on fire. Now, in all seriousness, I think this line's a little bit wide. When I did the research, Malkoun, he's getting rocked in all of these fights, getting dropped, and I think there's a world where Cody Brundage could implement a kind of a sprawl and brawl takedown type approach. If he just defends the takedowns, doesn't actually jump on these guillotines, can't necessarily trust him, but I think he's live to knock out Malkoun here. And Malkoun's not going to be just shooting right away for the takedown. He's going to be trying to set it up a little bit with his striking. So in that time, Brundage has some time there to hit his shot, and he seems to have some power. Like, he knocked out Tresean Gore, was able to rock and really hurt Rodolfo Vieira. Even in some of his earlier fights, you saw him hurting people. So I'm not counting him out here in this spot. I can see why people like Malkoun as the parlay piece, but I just think minus 700 as a money line for a guy who has zero, in my opinion, zero finishing ability is a risky move, especially at the 185 division. This guy, Malkoun, he's not going for submissions. He's looking for positional dominance to hold his opponents, in half guard top, and that's what he's going to do, and he's just going to pound away. And I think that's an efficient way to win MMA fights, especially when you're a favorite. You kind of want guys to rack up that time, but every round does start on the feet. So I think Brundage has a chance at the beginning of every round to finish this dude, unless he gets subbed himself. But I just really don't believe in the jiu-jitsu of Malkoun. He's like a blue belt, I think. And, his bottom game is pretty decent. He uses that half guard sweep. He'll go for that half guard, deep half, go under, and wind up on top a lot. So even if he winds up on the bottom, I don't think he's a fish out of water necessarily with the jiu-jitsu, but he's just not one of these submission guys. That being said, Cody Brundage, he just has to not give up here, and he has a chance to be live in this fight. So big plus number here, again, like plus 470. I'm thinking about it. Plus 1,600 on the KO round one earlier in the week. I'm mad I didn't jump on that.
Yeah, the things that make me a little nervous here is like the Brendan Allen fight in particular, where I just feel like Brendan Allen, he's a high-level black belt, he's a pretty damn skilled fighter. And I've always discounted the guy. Like, I feel like there's been some mental lapses and like you can't always rely on him for consistency purposes. But like Brendan Allen in that spot, like going out there against Malkoun looked like he probably could have won that fight. Maybe arguably did win that fight. And that's a way better grappler in my view than Cody Brundage. So that's my concern and my hesitation. But it's again about numbers, like what percentage of the time does Malkoun do it? If he's not getting that finish, if he doesn't have that equity, then you do have to question, his price in this spot. I think there's a certain amount of finishing equity, like I mentioned, opened up by Cody himself. But like, yeah, Malkoun's not a guy who's going to insist on it. He's not going to force it. If it presents itself, maybe he'll take it. But even then, we don't have that much evidence to suggest that. So I feel like this is a tricky fight. I will just say, though, looking, it's like plus 575 for Brundage ITD. And we're talking about middleweight. We're talking about a guy that's been knocked out in the first 20 seconds before. Just like I feel like that's a little bit wild. So definitely think that there could be some value on the unders here at significant plus money. Because Brundage killer be killed style, like I said, I think he could be the one to break Malkoun's finishing cherry and force him to get him out of there. But I also think if he wins this fight, it's probably a knockout or a submission in the first 2 rounds. So fascinating. And the lines are wide. Brundage by sub is 22-1. And I saw that and my eyes definitely, you could see still, they're pretty wide. I was like, whoa. 22-1, that's pretty wide. And I don't rate Brundage, but again, if you're guard pulling guillotines on Rodolfo Vieira, there's probably a 0% chance it's going to work unless your name's Fluffy Hernandez. But I don't know. Like if you guard pull on Jacob Malkoun, maybe you make something happen. Maybe you write your name in the history books.
Can I throw in one more thing before?
And then throw out the finesse when you're done.
For sure. Malkoun, he likes to leave his head on the outside, man. That's not a good look for somebody like Brundage who's going to be looking to wrap up that neck at every single second. Like, we kind of knock on the guillotines, right? And that's something Liam could go because that's like his favorite move, right? Dude's got a nasty guillotine, but they work. They work sometimes, man. And if you know how to finish them, the thing I don't like is he's kind of more so pulling back. You want to crunch in on the guillotine, if I'm not mistaken. I'll leave that to the expert Liam, but he's got a chance if he wraps up that neck. He did it versus Dalcha Longi and Bula in the second round, a comeback victory. So this guy is never out of the fight necessarily.
I agree with that. And I don't love his guillotine fundamentals. You know, the biggest thing with me is not that you finish the guillotine, it's that you end up in a better position than where you started, you know, and, or at least equal, you know, and I feel like when you're ending up in the bottom position with Adolfo Vieira because you went for the guillotine, that's just a sign of failure. Whereas if you end up, you know, back into a dogfight position or something like that, no skin off your nose. You know, you created a dynamic scramble. That's the thing. I don't love that about him here, especially where Malkoun is going to try and blanket him if he does those things. But to your point, you know, Malkoun's not fucking Adolfo Vieira, right? Like we're not going to trust his fundamental jiu-jitsu defense in those same ways. So fascinating. Finesse, what do you got, brother?
Yeah, I mean, Liam, almost everything you said, I completely align with. So, you know, it's not going to be super long-winded. In no world should Malkoun be a minus 600 favorite. So, especially coming off a fight versus Nick Maximov where he was, I think it was about even. I think it was minus 110, minus 110, maybe plus one. So just, I mean, the market is ridiculous on this fight. But, you know, I'm a nerd out right now. It's like the fucking Avengers. You know what I'm saying? There's an alternate multiverse universe out there where Cody Brundage knocks Malkoun's face off and he wins and he's back on track and maybe saves his job. But I think that's one in a million. I think that's struck by lightning territory. But you know, I 100% agree. Malkoun does not have his finishes have just his finishing ability, which is almost non-existent, especially in the UFC. I think he has a really good chance to finish Brundage. And I don't think you have to be a good finisher or a potent finisher to finish Brundage. Brundage just quits. I feel the same way about Brundage as I do about Collier. You know, comes out heavy. Like Liam said, it's still pretty stiff. You know, not the cleanest boxing, not the cleanest striking. But he comes in early, tries to take your fucking head off. And if he can't, he has nothing to offer after the first 4 or 5 minutes. So yeah, you know, I've seen Cody Brundage wilt under the first inkling of adversity, of pressure. At times it looks like he doesn't even want to be in there, doesn't want to fight, change the career, all of that type of stuff. So yeah, he's gonna quit in this fight. Malkoun, if there was like a prototype you want to kind of easily beat Cody Brundage, yeah, you may say, give him some power or whatever, but I think Malkoun is that prototype. Super high fight IQ, knows what he wants to do, executes the game plan, discipline within his game plan, and he's going to shoot singles, shoot doubles, get him down, lay on top, and try to beat him up on the ground. That's what he wants to do. I think that game plan is going to have so much success against Brundage. So it's maybe the last time we get to fade Brundage, but Brundage better learn how to speak PFL, buddy. Better learn how to speak Eagle FC, buddy. So I think there's very little chance. I mean, Cody Brundage round 1 KO is still sitting around 23-1, 24-1. I feel like you have to play that, right? Just throw $10 on it. I feel like you have to play that, but even though I think the line is way off, I think we can look back on this price and say maybe Malkoun justified this price. 30-27 them as easy as can be, or finishes them. So I do like Jacob Malkoun ITD. It was plus 125 last time I looked at it. Instead of playing that, I think I'm going to just dabble in some late round props. I mean, Jacob Malkoun round 2 KO is 10-1. Round 3 KO 18-1. Malkoun submission round 2 is 11-1. Submission round 3 is 20-1. So, I might just mix and match those, but I'm gonna parlay Malkoun. He's a part of a little 2-leg money line parlay that I have. That's like minus 130, minus 140. So yeah, I think Jacob Malkoun is gonna win this fight. Much smarter fighter. I love the points that you boys brought up about the guillotine, right? Normally people go for submissions, kind of sell out for submissions. It's 1, hopefully to finish the fight, or 2, to improve position. And Cody doesn't do that. Cody makes so many mistakes. So between the quit that's in him, absolutely no dog. He's going to give up in this fight, and Malkoun is going to dominate 30-27, 30-26, or he's going to finish him around 2 or around 3. So Malkoun money line and a money line parlay and some late round sub and KO props.
I don't mind any of those shots. I'm looking at a plus 100, even money on the fight to go under 2.5 rounds. That's my inkling here as well. You look at that last fight, I feel like Dumas was trying to prove a point that not only he could go 15 minutes, but he could out wrestle a wrestler. I think that was an indictment of Brundage as well, to be frank. You've been wrestling your whole life. wrestling is supposed to be your primary skill set. You're getting out wrestled by a guy who probably has been doing like 9 months of wrestling camps. And I just think that showed kind of his athletic ceiling, and I do think that when you look at a guy like Dumas, he's got a way higher athletic ceiling than even somebody like Malkoun. And that's the thing that's kind of interesting about this fight, where like, I think Malkoun, the reason he can get starched in the first round is because he's not that great an athlete, but he's actually very skilled. I think he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. At this point, he's been putting in a lot of time on the mats. It seems like that's the only thing he does, right? You can't imagine you spending that much time, doing striking, sparring, and this kind of stuff. So I feel like the fight to end by sub, kind of interesting. With the Brundage side obviously being that huge plus money number, but it's going to be, the same price for the ends by sub as for the, favorite to win by sub here in Malkoun. So again, just something I'd be looking at here. Save yourself that equity, take that 30-cent discount or whatever it is, because Brundage does have a good guillotine series. He's clearly very aggressive with it. And if Malkoun was to lose this fight, he's probably going to be forcing wrestling and grappling no matter what's happening. So unless he gets literally flatlined with the first couple punches, that's like plus 900, I think, the KO for Brundage. But again, the sub is being priced 22-1 in a fight that's probably going to be all grappling. Seems a little bit wide. And Brundage has 1 win by decision in his career. He's 1-2 career to the decision. So not a very impressive record in those fights that go long. He's basically finish or bust. So I would be curious too if people are betting Brundage in the finish only market, right? Because a lot of people think of Malkoun as a guy with no finishing upside. So if that's the case, then like Brundage, how would he win the fight? He's got to finish. It's like, I would wonder what that price is as well. Kind of curious, but in any case, we can move on because this is a shitty fight. Next up, we've got Tim Means. He's taking on Andre Fialho. This is a welterweight matchup, and I thought Tim Means looked a little bit old. I'll be frank. At the face-offs today, I didn't love to see that, but I do think that, skill for skill, he's right up there with Fialho. I don't think of Fialho as a very good fighter. I think he's shown himself to be a little bit fraudulent in the UFC. He had been knocked out a couple times prior. I thought to myself, young guy, getting better. He's going to make the improvements. He's going to look a lot different. He's training with a good team. What is it, Killcliff, I think? Like, he's just been surrounded by the right people. You think he's going to get better. He just never does. He's just the same guy every time, swanging and banging in the pocket, likes to get down, likes to throw hands. He's got good, trigger on the counter. He's willing to throw. He's not afraid to get into a fight. So it's certainly some positives. He's got power in his hands. Is there anything else you could say about the guy positively? I mean, like, he doesn't really do anything else. I had been throwing around the Fialho by sub look earlier on in the week just because, again, I talk about guys' losses being pathological. You talk about Tim Means. I made a lot of money betting against Tim Means by sub. So if this is my last opportunity, maybe I go out to the well again. It's like 16-1. But it's also a guy who really doesn't attempt any offensive jiu-jitsu. It would kind of be breaking from form for Fialho to pull that off here. So it feels like I'm kind of grasping at straws here. I look at this fight and I say to myself, Tim Means definitely can win this fight, but he's starting to slow down pretty significantly. Most fights for Fialho and Means are both decided, pretty early on. Max Payne Griffin's a guy that just can't finish a fight. Like, it's just impossible. He throws with a lot of power. He hurts everybody. Every fight goes to distance. It's magical. Neil Magny was as good as knocked out. The fight went the distance. I don't know what happened. So I look at this and I just say to myself, the fight not to go the distance at minus 225 feels like a play to me. Like, I didn't bet it yet, but like, I'm just looking at that saying, like, Tim Means has the cardio to fight 7.5 minutes unless he's fighting Max Griffin. He's 39. The rate at which people get knocked out flies up after 38 years of age. And on the other side, Fialho has a terrible chin. He gets knocked out every fight. So it's like, how wrong could I be? Is Fialho just going to turn into a wrestler here? I would be kind of surprised. So the only way I see this going the distance is if Tim Means just takes him down, spams takedowns, and holds him down. And I don't really see that either. So I think this is a fight that probably ends inside the distance at a really high clip. And I think Fialho maybe should be favored like minus 150. Minus 160. I don't feel like he should be a huge favorite here because he's a chinny guy that doesn't really grapple. So I feel like he's probably going to put his chin on the line here again. So yeah. What do you think about this one?
Did you look at the line yet? Because that's about where it's at right now. I think it's at like minus 157 Fialho on Bet Online.
That sounds about right to me. Honestly, I think that's probably fair. So I would go a little bit shorter. Because he doesn't have the grappling upside. But again, 10-year age gap, I can't ignore that either. Tim Means definitely looks old in his last couple fights.
No, for sure. Man, though, you did say it. You hit the nail on the head. This one probably ends inside the distance. And Tim Means constantly is shooting inside. He could leave his neck out there. I don't have much to say for this one, but I will leave it off with this. This isn't necessarily like a fight breakdown, but plus 1,600. Like, we still have to figure out on these big prop plays or just a big plus number in general, which is usually where you're getting it, right? Still, you got to look, are you getting value on that number? Like, is it still that percentage to win? Because you got to think Fialho, right? Does he ever attempt submissions? Is it really possible it's going to happen? But we did just see it with Olberg. So
there's a first time for everything, and the price will always change after. I tell people that too. So you got to think about, is it a good enough opportunity? And like, I think Tim Means is super susceptible in those positions. That's why I think it's value. So I think it's an important consideration.
And shit, if me and you could see it, then I know the people that are training with Andre Fialho see it as well. So I see him rocking him with a left hook. Dude shoots in and a submission. No way. I don't really like to attack the prop markets. So there's no way I'm actually really going to bet this for any real crazy money. But Fialho sub, man, might just be a $10 bet. You also got to be careful with those small bets. They add up over time, whether you think so or not. Like, 10 years, those bets add up. Like, you could, if you actually had a tracker, you'd probably go back and look like, man, maybe I wasted 5 units just on these small bets, or more than that for some people. So
I always say check your own numbers, but for me personally, I've had runs where I've missed 12 submission props, 14 submission props in a row, right? Submission props are super volatile. But then when you hit Thomas Lane by sub plus 1,200, like, you'll pay for many of the ones you missed, right? When you feel super convicted about one and you go 1 unit on Andrade subs plus 600, you get 6 units back. It's like you can get real nice return on investment for these props, but you got to be selective, right? If you play every one of them, you go broke. But if you pick the right spots and you're selective, you can make your return. So for me here, this is one where I do think you could try and get creative and contrarian. 2 things I'm always looking to be on these shows. And it's not always going to be perfect, right? Sometimes it's going to look like value and not come through. But other times it's going to be the side that pays off. And Olberg was the time. We've seen many other times where somebody breaks through, they get there first, they change it up, and nobody has it. Who had the plus blah, blah, blah? Yuri Prohaska submitted Glover Teixeira. Don't fucking tell me it can't happen. All right. Y'all will always tell me this can't happen. Then it happens, right? Kamaru Usman could never get knocked out in the 5th round by a head kick from Leon Edwards until it happened. All right. So the money's still just as green. Finesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I think what you just said is perfect for this fight. I think this is a perfect fight to be creative, take some long shots. You know what I'm saying? Me personally, I even after watching tape, I was really, really close to locking in Fialho. But the more I thought about it, I watched the tape again on both of these guys because I was so unsure. And I came away with the same kind of ideas, just super unsure. I can see a million different ways that this fight plays out. And you boys alluded to that. Sub, knockouts, overs, unders. I see a bunch of different ways. So, in situations like that, I'm more inclined to just stay off. Last couple of Tim Means fights, I love the Dirty Bird. He a legend. You know what I'm saying? Dirty Bird's a legend, but, pushing 40, he's looked a lot slower. Durability's, becoming an even bigger question mark. He's looked slower, especially defensively, on the striking defense. So Fialho's just so bad, right? I want to fade the Dirty Bird, unfortunately, but Fialho's just so bad. So I can't fade this fighter with this fighter. It's just unfortunate. So yeah, I think that's a perfect way to say it. Be creative, maybe take a couple of long shots. And yeah, JB was talking about these prop sprinkles. I don't even bet full units on props. I bet 0.2, 0.25 units, something like that. And as a stretch, I went pretty cold. You know what I'm saying? And you have 7, 8 props on a card, and I looked and I felt like I had a pretty good card, but I wind up only plus 2 units, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I lost like 2 units, 2.2 units on props. So yeah, I try to be a little bit more selective. I'd rather just absolutely hammer money lines and stuff like that, which we'll talk about here coming up on some of these favorites. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting fight. I think the fight is well made, by the matchmakers. Shout out to them. Both guys on 3-5 losing streak. So somebody's gonna save their job. And we'll see. Should be interesting, but popcorn fight for me, pass betting wise.
I like it. I am hopeful and expecting that somebody gets finished here. I'm hopeful that it's Tim Means doing the job, knocking this guy's head off. That'd be kind of cool. That would be one for the culture. The Dirty Bird. I believe he's a wrestling coach as well. So shout out to Tim Means, still doing the damn thing, giving back to the community. And one way to stay fresh, one way to stay young, you still get in there and wrestle with them kids, man. They'll beat your ass. They'll keep you young. High school kids, they stay in the wrestling. They're in such good shape. That they'll give you a run where you're like, oh my God, I'm old. You feel old. So I feel like Tim Means going to come in, give a good, honest account of himself. But it's either going to have to be done in the first 8 minutes or it's going to start looking real salty from that point forward. So probably looks that fight not to go the distance, maybe some contrarian sub looks, hoping for a club and sub from either one of these guys. That'd be gravy because you're seeing some really wide props out there on those angles. Next up, guys, Dan Argueta is taking on Miles Johns. Tweeted it out today. When you're making everybody wait, but you still make the weight, right? Last to weigh in, still made the weight. Dan Argueta, shades on, doing the whole bit. Guy seems ready to go. And this is a hell of a fight. Miles Johns on the other side of things, he's been favored in most of his UFC outings. He's a guy that people are pretty high on. He's got some power in his hands, moves his head. I believe he's a Fortis MMA guy, throws those kicks to the leg. Knows how to wrestle too. He's not a complete walkover in any position. So he seems like a guy who's going to be tough, but he's got a couple losses in the UFC. Not to any scrubs, Mario Batista. These are good fighters, right? You're not going to take anything away from him. But I also feel like I've never been a Miles Johns guy. I bet him against Kevin Natividad. That's the only time I ever bet on him. Kevin really undersized for the division. I thought Miles cheated in that fight. If you guys have heard me talk at all this week, I've kind of talked about that point a few times. He grabbed the glove, throws a knockout punch there, really just caught Kevin in a position where he's can't defend, right? Like if I have your glove over here, you can't put it up to block. So he just knocked him out while he was defenseless. Kind of a classless move there. Celebrated it anyway. Just things that rub me the wrong way. And I like to see people get their just desserts. And I feel like if somebody's going to deal just desserts, it's Dan Argueta. He hasn't been eating many just desserts. You saw what he looked like on the scales today. Difficult weight cut for this guy to 135. That's why when he takes a short notice look up at 145 against Damon Jackson, he did not look too out of place there. He was able to fight with him. He was able to keep it competitive, start to come back on him in round 3. And Damon Jackson has 22 wins in professional MMA. 19 of them are inside the distance. He could not finish this man from 135 pounds. Because he's a dog and he does not want to go away easy. He's not going to give anything away. And I feel like a guy like Miles Johns is a talented guy. He's a skilled guy. Nothing wrong with him physically. But I think mentally he could break inside a fight when he doesn't feel like he's having his way. And I feel like he's not going to have his way against Dan Argueta unless he knocks him cold out. Because I feel like Dan Argueta is a guy that's just hard to fight. He's hard to deal with. He brings a lot of pressure and intensity. And granted, was I way more bullish on betting him last time out because he was a plus money price? Yes. So am I running to the window to bet him? No, because he doesn't have the best striking. He's not the cleanest guy on the feet, but he's got heart. He's got intensity. He's got some power. He's willing to swing. And the other thing is he boxes into wrestling positions and then wrestles. He knows what he's good at. He's not like, oh, I'm Johnny boxing. Let me stand out here and test my mettle. Every fight that I see, the guy attempts as many takedowns as he possibly can. If he can push against the fence, he will. And guys, he's picking people up, slamming them, turning them sideways, throwing a hook in. Like he moves. Once he gets you to the ground, he starts trying to advance. He starts trying to beat you up. If you start standing up, he's throwing big shots against the fence. I like a lot of his instincts in those positions. He tries to score and he tries not to let anybody off the hook for anything. I like that kind of guy. So for me, I think Miles Johns has some skills, definitely could win. I just don't like him. I never liked him. I trust my gut, my instincts, and I like Dan Argueta overall. I think he's a better fighter. I think he projects higher in the division. So give me Dan Argueta. I think he gets the win. Finesse, how do you feel?
I 100% agree, my brother. I'm official on Dan Argueta minus 180. Of course, juicy. Some people might not necessarily like that juice. If you want to parlay him, feel free. But I don't mind just hammering the straight on Dan Argueta, and I agree with a lot of your points. Not only was Damon Jackson short notice, not only was Damon Jackson up a weight class, but in his UFC debut, and we know how those go sometimes. And I think he made a great account for himself. Damon Jackson is dangerous, and he is aggressive, and he does not fuck around. And up a weight class on your debut, that is a big test. And I think he had moments in that fight, close fight, one that he ultimately dropped, but had moments in that fight. And the Ronnie Lawrence fight really impressed me for as long as it lasted, right? We didn't get a lot due to Mr. Cigarettes and Alcohol Breath. What's his name? I forget his name.
Keith Peterson, the
Keith
all
Peterson.
nonsense Keith Peterson robbed me my plus 170.
Craziness. So I was actually on the Ronnie Lawrence side, right? And I guess that's why I'm extra impressed. You know, Argueta came out, he just looked different to me. You know, watching the tape previously and watching that Argueta, I don't know if it's the hair, I don't know if it's the curly hair, I don't know what it is. You know, Wheaties for breakfast, but he just came out super aggressive, like that killer instinct. I don't really know how to accurately describe it, but he just looked like a killer in there. So, you know, Dan Argueta's 30, right? But again, we talked about this before, a young 30, right? Only 10 pro fights, pretty new into his pro career. So not a lot of tread on the tires. And, you know, I think we're going to see the best Dan Argueta that we've seen in the octagon. You know, 4th UFC fight now, I believe. I think we're going to see the best Dan Argueta that there is. Dan Argueta is a dog. Miles John is not. You know, Miles John, very low volume. The cardio is a huge question mark for me, especially somebody that, you know, starts round 1, second one, already low value. So, yeah, I think Dan Argueta is going to put it on this guy. I think he's going to break Miles John. I think Miles John is very breakable. Is very breakable. So, you know, I've seen some debate online and stuff like that. Even some people that I respect on both sides of the kind of over-under situation. Fight goes, fight doesn't go. But, you know, Miles Johns is a quitter, and I feel like he is liable to be broken in this fight, especially by Argueta style. You mentioned it. You know, we're going to talk about Gamrot a little bit later. Maybe not on that level, you know what I'm saying? Maybe not as aggressive, not as technical, not as skilled, but Argueta's a dog. He knows what the game plan is. He's super aggressive. And I think I think that'll work very, very well in this matchup against a guy like Miles John. So I like Argueta round 2, round 3 props. I'm going to dabble and look at what I like odds wise, but I think he can end this fight however he wants. I think he can sub him. I think that's the more plausible outcome, I'd say, just from the aggressiveness, you know, whether it's taking it back or, you know, Miles John just put himself in a compromised position. So I just trust everything about Argueta. I do not trust Miles John. I think Argueta has way too many advantages in his fight, which is why I'm okay laying the juice. You know, of course, I wish it was minus 140, minus 150. You know, of course I do, but I'll lay the minus 180 pretty happily. I think Argueta finishes this fight.
I don't disagree. You know, I think it could go to a decision as well. I think he could break him and just beat him down the stretch with wrestling pace. But you look, you know, Myron Santos, I'll give this color as I kick it over to my guy Jewish Bettor. Myron Santos, a guy the UFC just looked to sign, right? They tried to bring him in to fight Sean Woodson, had some visa issues, wasn't able to make it to the fight. If you guys remember, whole controversy, they had Dennis Bazooka come in instead, right? But I actually had taped him in that amount of time because I was like, you know, that's what I do, right? I was like trying to get ready for the show, whatever. They announced the fight. I start taping the guy, and then they canceled the fight. I was like, God, why did I waste my time? But it did go back and tell me Dan Argueta beat the absolute piss out of Myron Santos in LFA. Beat the piss out of him. Like, got hit with maybe 1 or 2 shots in the early going, and he was like, yeah, F this. Picked him up, took him down, and beat the tar out of him the rest of the fight, over and over each round, passing, looking good, dropping big shots, and showing that he could wrestle hard for the 15 and drop a lot of ground and pound, which is something I like to see in that spot. Myron Santos, not a small guy either, was moving him around pretty easily and efficiently. That's the only loss of his career. It was against Dan Argueta, and he got the fucking shit beat out of him. So I do look at that and say to myself, yo, it's a good quality win. Like, Dan Argueta was taking on difficult challenges before he got to the UFC, and I think that's why he looked so prepared. He already got a new contract. You know, normally they sign these things on a 4-fight deal. You're talking about he's coming in for a 4th fight, and he's already got that new contract. The UFC was like, we like what we see, Dan. Let's do it again. Like, so for me, I just feel like this guy's done everything right. Even in his last fight, what else could you ask of the guy? He goes out there and puts on a masterclass, doesn't go out his way. You know, he wasn't able to put the finishing touches there. Okay, but he did everything right. They bringing him back. He makes the weight again. You know, looks good doing it. The guy who seems like he's got a lot of the boxes checked in terms of some marketing potential as well. Last time out, got a quick finish, going out there looking to put on an aggressive style, not laying and praying, right? That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing an active guy who wants to go out there and scrap. And so I feel like that's a guy that UFC can get behind. And, you know, Miles Johns, yeah, he's taking some guys out, but they're Anderson Dos Santos, guy who's really old for the division, didn't look like he was at all qualified for the UFC, frankly. You know, you look at another guy he took out, Kevin Natividad, undersized for the division. was very young in his career, only starting to come along a little bit more now. So I just think there's some real concerns, red flags, problems. Jewish Bettor, how do you feel about this matchup, my man? Do you like a side in this matchup?
Yeah, I do, and I appreciate the dude Big Bird with the donation. Shout out to Liam for the 5-1 Gaziev sub. God damn, my man. That's a beautiful one on the heavyweight contender
I hit
series
that
fight.
too. That shit was beautiful. Beautiful.
Let's go. Good shit, my man.
Very good call. I know you guys were sweating when big boy Velasco was taking us back. But with that being said, I'm on the opposite side on this one. I'm on the Miles John side. So I got to stake my claim, especially with two sharp minds on the other side. Dan Argueta is going to look to wrestle in a spot. That's his path. And you guys kind of already discussed that. Let's look on paper at Miles John's just takedown defense. And he has wrestling chops himself. You know, that's kind of what he's known as, the wrestler. But he doesn't necessarily use it offensively. He's using it defensively. This guy boasts a 92% takedown defense in the UFC. And when I watch his takedown defense, not just on the paper, on the film, I love what I see. Yes, Dan Argueta keeps a pace, and you know, is Miles Johns gonna gas out? You know, Castaneda was able to kind of, you know, really keep a striking pace on him. I don't think Argueta is gonna be able to necessarily do that. He's gonna look to grapple, and I've seen in the past when he grapples, this guy, you know, his arms fill up and his striking gets even slower. Whereas Johns, you know, you alluded to it. He's not necessarily high volume, but he does have that power behind him. And if he's landing on Argueta and he's gaining the confidence that he's able to stuff these takedowns and he's able to put hands on this guy, you know, it's crazy kind of how people get a bad rap or just the name, you know, people hear a name and they kind of already have an opinion about him. Liam kind of said this a little bit earlier. It seemed with Fialho, like when he was coming into the UFC, people were kind of high on him, lose a bunch of fights, and now we don't know if he's going to beat a 39-year-old Tim Means. You know, for some reason, I just feel like Miles Johns, I don't know what the reasoning is. He just kind of got a bad rap from folks. You know, it could be just the level of competition he's facing, right? Liam did allude to this. He hasn't beaten the best of guys. I was actually there for that Dos Santos knockout. I gave Johns a fist bump. I remember the sweat of Dos Santos's chin just on mine. You know, it was pretty cool. But Johns, you know, he's a little short dude. He's not a big guy, but he's stocky from what I've seen. And I can see how he could pack a lot of power. You know, maybe get tired as the fight goes along if somebody's keeping a high pace on him. But like I said, if he's able to stuff the takedowns, which he's proven to be able to do in the past, Argueta's striking is not the best, in my opinion. It lacks, and I think you guys also alluded to this, it lacks a lot, to say the least. And I think, you know, Johns, even as low volume as he is, he can land that calf kick, just land those punches. And once he sees this guy, you know, can't wrestle him and he's getting tired, it could be a good night for Miles Johns. And let's just talk about, you know, this guy's coming off the win against Argueta, and then he's coming off the, you know, the Damon Jackson fight was short notice, but I think he got handled for 2 rounds, and then he came back on a tired Jackson, which is good. You know, it's a good look. He never gave up, but let's call it for what it was. It still was a 29-28 victory for Damon Jackson, who didn't have a lot of time to prepare for a style of Argueta either. Let's remember that. So, you know, guy with amazing back.
A teammate, by the way, a teammate at Fortis MMA.
Boom. Very good point. Johns, you know, could take some pointers possibly from Jackson here in this spot. But this good guy was losing to Diego Silva. You know, Guire was having his not losing, but it was a split decision. Had his moments, you know, with Aguirre, where Aguirre was getting the moments of the striking, and then we get the last thing we seen in our mind, and I think this is where the line is getting a little bit overreacted on, is that Ronnie Lawrence win. You know, I'll let you tell me, do you think that was a finish on a guillotine? Did the ref stop it early? What was going to happen there? If he winds up in mount, you know, how does the rest of that fight necessarily go? Sure, he looked good for the short amount of time it was, but I just can't take that victory as serious as everybody else is taking it. So I think it's a little bit of a reaction here. I think this is going to be a unpopular pick this week. I think I'm going to get a lot of disagreement on this one, but I've never tried to go against the other side. I'm not looking to do it on purpose. I just think Johns has a legitimate stake to to winning this fight here by decision or by knockout.
Yeah,
I didn't even. Oh no, please go ahead.
No, yeah, Leon, I'm sorry if I can real quick. Yeah, I'd be a lot more worried about this matchup, especially the way judges are judging fights now, based on damage instead of top control and not really doing anything on top. I'd be a lot more worried if, because Argueta's not skilled in the striking, right? He's going to throw, right? He's going to try to put some striking volume on you, but, he wants to wrestle. So not technical at all on the striking. I'd be a lot more worried if he wasn't as aggressive on the ground, right? I think he can make up on the, from the lack of damage on the feet by causing that damage on the ground and putting Johns in a really a bunch of compromising positions. So that's kind of what pushed me to the edge, right? Because, the judges, we've seen it more and more pronounced every single week, right? 3 minutes of top control, not really meaning as much as I'm butchering your face for the other 2 minutes. So that's why I kind of, actually lean towards the Argueta side. I think Argueta's gonna absolutely dog him. David Argueta with hair is a lot better than Argueta with no hair. I'll tell you that right now. So
I feel you, my man. I'm looking at this and I'm just thinking to myself, like, I don't want to get burnt chasing Argueta to the chalk price. Last time out, I had a great price, right? I definitely had a great price. And so that's why I don't want to get like FOMO here. The one thing I did notice though, is like a lot of love on the Argueta by sub price. For sure. It's coming down. And I don't think Miles is like a complete fish on the mat. But I do think his chin's a little sketchy and his cardio is a little sketchy. So I almost lean towards like a late finish. And I don't know that I preference the sub. Like, again, look at that Myron Santos fight. He will look for some sub attempts, but it's not like he's like, he cares which way he finishes. Like some guys I say they preference the submission. I think this guy has no preference. He just wants to finish you. He would like to win the fight. So I don't think he's very effective with his strikes from standing. But on top, he hits like a fucking truck. As well. He was doing a lot of damage to guys in the fights that I saw. So it's for me just a question of, it's kind of like that fight last week on Contender Series where I said the critical question is, can she get takedowns? Because if she gets the takedowns, she's an operator on top. Then I had no questions, but she got the takedowns early. She was operating on top. When she couldn't get the takedown, she looked like dog shit, right? She's just getting easily walked around the octagon, falling over for takedown attempts, 10-8 round, right? So like, that's my fear here for Argueta. It's just if he's not getting the takedowns, he could get beat up on the feet, wear some damage, and then slow down a little bit himself. Because we see how you get a guy with good cardio to slow down. You beat the shit out of him, right? And Miles Johns can throw some power. He does mix it up to the body. So I think it's a fun fight on paper, but I just see, Miles Johns kind of having this trend line overall in his fights. And so I don't want to change my tune. I've never liked the guy. I liked Dan Argueta prior to his last fight. So I'm really not changing much. I'm just going with my gut, and feel wise. I just like this fight for Dan Argueta. I think he's a hell of a fighter. And I like his heart and his gut. So again, he's a guy that I'm always looking to bet at that plus money tag, but in this spot, I'm just going to end up picking him to get the win. And I think that KO line at 7-8 to 1 is a touch wide, but I would want a little bit more to get involved. Next up. Charles Jourdain is kicking off the main card against Ricardo Ramos. So we've made it to the main card, folks, and we are going to, fly through this one, at least on my end, because I don't have any action here. I don't think I'll have any action here. If anything, I would probably get involved with the fight not to go the distance. When I look at this fight on paper, I just think of these guys as two guys that both make some pivotal mistakes, right? With Charles Jourdain, he gets taken down frequently, too easily, but it's against pretty high-level guys mostly, and he has shown some decent submission defense. So I think Ramos' best chance is to either clip him with that crazy spinning shit, because Jourdain kind of invites that a little bit. He's been knocked down before. He's been hurt. I always talk about the best bets you have that didn't cash. I had, what's his name? The Australian kid, Coolabel. I had Coolabel against him when I went to the draw. It was like plus 385 or whatever. And so I'll take that, right? Anytime I can get a guy who's going to get a knockdown, mix it up. Jourdain, he's a small favorite here, right? Not a big price. And I do think that last time out, I was on Jourdain against Wood. So I don't want to overreact here and be like, Jourdain sucks. But I was also disappointed by that fight. I just felt like he should be making more improvements at this point in his career. He's been around for a long time. And he's like almost making excuses. He's like, not everybody can be George St. Pierre. I mean, brother, I understand that, but like, there's a difference between not being George St. Pierre and getting taken down 50 times by Nathaniel Wood when he pushes you in the shoulder. So I do think of like, a little bit of a balance between, I want my fighter to have humility. I want them to be, thinking logically, but I also don't want them to be making excuses. I'd rather a guy who's overconfident and delusional than a guy who's like, it is what it is. I guess I'm just not good at this. That guy is not going to put on, I feel like, most of the time. So Jourdain, here's what I like about him, though. You see these two guys face off. He's bigger. He's just a bigger guy. He looks physically bigger, and he tends to come on strong late in fights. Ramos is a guy who's a little bit hit and miss in that regard. I don't think he's got bad cardio per se, but I just don't know how he'll like it if it's a gritty, dirty fight where he's getting hit and getting hurt. And that, for me, is like Jourdain sometimes thrives in those fights. He kind of will go back and forth with somebody. He'll have a round where he loses and then come back and win the next one. Whereas I feel like Ramos likes to have a fight his way. He can make it pretty. He can win in amazing fashion. But I do feel like when somebody brings a lot to him, he could just fold up the shop. He's been TKO'd twice in the UFC. Lerone Murphy, not a prolific finisher. He's clearly got power and athleticism, not a prolific finisher in the octagon. Was able to put this guy away in the first round. He missed weight by 9 pounds in his last fight. And a long-term angle I've been looking at, I mentioned it last week, Josh Friend taking on Roman Kopylov. He missed weight. He fucked up. They gave him a guy nobody's ever heard of, 20,000 Instagram followers, curly hair. Nobody's seen him before, but he's a Russian killer that can rip your freaking head off and kick you in the body and send you to the hospital. So I feel like the UFC punishes guys when they miss weight sometimes. And I look at this on paper and I'm like, Jourdain, pretty big guy, tweener between these two divisions, pretty difficult to submit, has that good back defense. We saw Shane Burgos basically hang out on his back 7.5 minutes, not able to put him away. So I do think to myself, like, maybe Jourdain just defends the positions here if he gets in some, dicey spots and lands the bigger shots. But I do feel like both these guys make enough mistakes that I almost want to just play some violence and hope somebody does something stupid. Finesse, how do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, I'm super interested in this fight. Oh, Canada. I'm gonna take Charles Jourdain -142 on FanDuel. That's the best line I see. I love Charles Jourdain in this spot. I really, really do. It's one of the first bets I locked in this week. There's just so much to like on the Jourdain side for me. Super clean, super crisp boxing, throws in combos, great combos, which I love. He invests in the body, which I think is going to be important in this matchup, especially with the question mark cardio on the side of Ramos. Super nasty in the pocket. And Liam, you allude to this, just that nastiness, right? Super nasty in the pocket, super nasty in the clinch, active in the clinch, versatile striking, right? Knees, elbows, spinning attacks, and super aware defensively, especially in close, which I also think will be important in this fight. Great fight IQ. I think his fight IQ is levels above Ramos's. Very tactical. We saw that in, the Kron Gracie fight. It wasn't an exciting fight, probably not what you paid for, but he fought as close to a perfect fight in my mind as I think there is. Stayed out of danger the whole fight. Kron is not a great fighter, but he's still dangerous. We know the areas in which he is dangerous on the mat, the jiu-jitsu game and stuff like that. So, I mean, he beat him up for 3 rounds, fought a perfect fight, and 30-27 him pretty easy. Nathaniel Wood fight, he got 30-27 in that fight. Charles Jourdain did. I don't necessarily agree with that scorecard. I think he did lose the fight. I watched it a couple of times because, 1, it's a great fight, and 2, it was pretty close, fairly close. I thought he put up a good account of himself. He landed like 120 total strikes, in a 3-round fight. Nathaniel Wood is a savage, true prospect in this division, borderline championship trajectory from Nathaniel Wood. So, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that showing. Good get-up game too. So, very susceptible to the takedowns, especially trips, inside trips, outside trips. But I like the tenacity and the wherewithal and the will to get up. He's super tough, super durable. And I think you mentioned this too, Liam. Only been finished once in his career via sub, but just extremely durable, extremely tough to get out of there. And really good cardio, really good 15-minute cardio. There are some negatives on the Jourdain side. I feel like distance management, I don't feel like is the best. Doesn't really use his length that well. He allows his opponents to kind of control the distance at times, close distance very easily. He is hittable, especially off counters and stuff like that. But I just think it's a good matchup. Liam, you alluded to this as well, just the inconsistencies on the Ramos side. He comes out one fight, looks like a killer, looks like a real threat in the division, and then comes out the next fight and kind of looks flat and just kind of looks bad. I think I read an article, I think it was on Ramos, that he fought in like Texas or New York or something like that. And instead of fighting and then kind of going back to wherever the fuck he lives or resides. I think he stayed in the city for like 7-8 weeks and just kind of partied, right? So that's not, I don't put too much stock into that, but I also believe he's not training with his normal guys. I think he's out of AKA, and for this fight he's training out of Brazil, I think I read. So that's a red flag for me too. I just like the grit. I like the consistency. We know what we're going to get from Jourdain. You mentioned he's not making leaps and bounds skills wise, and while I do agree with that, I think he still has more than enough weapons, more than enough ways to win this fight. Ramos is that, capoeira style, that electric, fun to watch, a lot of spinning shit. He got spinning back elbow finishes and spinning wheel kicks, back wheel kicks and stuff like that. And that's what saps the cardio. You know what I'm saying? So cardio is way too big of a question mark. I think Jourdain can break Ramos later in this fight. I'm cool with just taking the money line and kind of hammering that. I will look at some props, some late finishes and stuff like that. I worry about the takedown defense, obviously, but I don't rate Ramos's offensive wrestling super, super high. I think he's dangerous. Charles Jourdain loves to give up his back, but like you said, good, really good submission defense, even against a guy like Shane Burgos, who was way bigger than him in that fight. So, tougher level of competition. I like the tools and the weapons that Jourdain brings, and I think it's going to be enough to either win by decision pretty convincingly or finish this fight in rounds 2 or 3. So give me Charles Jourdain on the money line, -142, and give me some late props, some late finish props.
Fair enough, my man. I think that all makes logical sense to me. I'm looking. I wanted to just bring up this image so everybody could see what I'm seeing. And, if y'all disagree, that's fine. But I always look at the face-offs and just try and establish, is there any significant size advantage? This picture, I don't think does it the best justice. I did look around really quick, didn't see a greater picture to show it off. But you look at the musculature and the definition of a guy like a Charles Jourdain, he does look like he's physically very prepared, filled out physically into his body. A guy like Ramos, if you look at his best wins in the UFC, most of them are in the bantamweight division. At 135 pounds, got some nice wins. Now he's up at featherweight. You look at Charles Jourdain, his last win before he came to the UFC was at lightweight. He fought his UFC debut against Des Green at lightweight as well. So he's a guy that's fought at 155. In terms of the reach here, you're seeing a slightly bigger frame actually from Ricardo Ramos. It's just the musculature and the density. I feel like he's not quite as big as Jourdain personally. So that's why I made that comment, but I wanted to show my work and say, I'm not just speaking out of my ass. I know that there's a slight difference in the frame and the range here, but I just think like you look at these two guys, it looks to me like he's a bigger physical guy. And I've been doing this shit for a long time. I've been seeing people weigh in at wrestling tournaments for a long time. I kind of just have a feel for it. So it's not perfect, it's not a science, but it's just my way of looking at it. I feel like something that I keep in mind. Jewish Bettor, do you feel like you've got an edge here? Do you like any kind of bets in this fight? What do you think? Closely line matchup here at featherweight.
You think Jourdain looks bigger, right?
I do.
Yeah, which is interesting because it was Ramos who had the weight issues last time. Even though he did fight, at 135, he was having issues to make the weight in his last fight, which I was believe at 45.
True that. So what does that say?
Right.
Is that a discipline problem or a size problem?
I can't even tell you. And I watched some of Jourdain's like Instagram things and his weigh-ins or whatever, might have been YouTube. And he said, this is the most he's ever retained, most muscle mass he's retained throughout a weight cut. And that's something he said. He said he's got the man strength now that he's 28, getting a little bit older. Both these guys are 28-year-old prospects, but I'm gonna go with the saying. I'm gonna keep this short and sweet, simple. I got a bet on a pretty decent sized bet on Jourdain. Although, plays I was kind of saying I kind of have some type of bet on, but Jourdain I do have a bet on as well. I think he's going to have the striking advantage here and always bet cardio. The later the fight goes, he's going to have the better, last 10 minutes of this fight all day, in my opinion, especially the last 7. He's going to take over. And this could look similar like to the Shane Burgos fight where he's able to get backpack for some of the fight. But I thought Jourdain won that, especially off the damage, just in general. And
I got away with one there.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I said
don't fade Shane Burgos in New York unless it's against Cassius Clay Collier. Do you understand?
Right. Not everybody has Shane Burgos' chin though, and we've seen Ramos finished by Lerone Murphy, who's not a potent finisher by any necessary means. Although that was at 135, that's what I'm gonna leave it off at. I think Jourdain winds up butchering him, maybe even finishing him. Give me Jourdain in the spot all day, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, if there's one thing Jourdain loves, it's beating somebody's ass until the final bell in round 3 and not cashing the ITD prop. Because Andre Ewell, he literally Spartan kicked that guy out of the octagon, but it was at the 5-minute mark. Like brutal. Did you have something you wanted to add, Finesse?
Yeah, pretty good live band spot too. You know, I mentioned the capoeira style from Ramos, and you know that can be friendly, that can be judge friendly. So you know he might catch him with some spinning shit early, as he's shown us plenty of times in the past. So if you might come out of round 1 with a plus 150, plus 200 type of situation on Charles Jourdain. So if we do get that, I'm definitely gonna double dip on my man Eric Jourdain.
Jourdain's gonna knock him out in round 1, bro.
Ooh, let's get it. I like it.
Oh shit. So for me, just leaning towards the fight not to go here. I feel like that's what I like. I feel like both guys cutting a lot of weight here. That could take away from your chin. Interesting notes about the size. You can only do so much looking from online. We don't get every perspective. We get like a little bit, a snippet of the camera. It's a snapshot. And it does make me, interested to know. Santino DeFranco says Ramos is way bigger, having stood next to both of them. That's interesting, so for me, that's enough to just say, hey, fight doesn't go the distance for me or pass, but size isn't everything either. And I do think that Ramos, he is a guy who has a lot to prove in this spot. Missed weight by a significant degree last time, fucked up the bag, and took a lot of time off in between. So let's see what he produces here. Still a young guy, still an opportunity to get back on track. But Charles Jourdain, I think he's got that Howlerhead sponsorship. He's a guy that the UFC's been putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into over the years. So it's good shit. Yeah, and I'm not even disagreeing with you, contender. I do think he's got some power in his hands, but his finishing instincts just haven't been there in the UFC. Certainly not across the board, and he got a first-round finish in that spot. Makwan Amirkhani has cigarette cardio. We've discussed this many times in the show, okay?
In the last fight, too, the Ramos, when he missed weight, it got canceled, right? And that was like pulled off last minute, right?
That's correct. He was supposed to fight Austin Lingo, and Austin Lingo ended up fighting Malkoun.
UFC don't like when people do that shit, bro. So.
Yep. Although in this spot, I feel like they'll forgive a Ricardo Ramos who's 7-3 in the UFC a little more than some other guys like a Josh Friend and these kind of guys. But yeah, man, it's a fun one. Good scrap in the featherweight division. Let's see how it shakes out. Next up, we've got Bryan the Butcher Battle taking on AJ the Ghost Fletcher here. I'm going to kick this over to my guests first. I do have an opinion on this one, but I want to let you guys lead it off, not bias the commentary pool here, and let you guys have the first rip. So Finesse, my guy, how do you feel about this fight, brother? We'll kick it to you.
Yeah, he's always going to be Pooh Bear in my heart. Fuck the Butcher. He's always going to be Pooh Bear in my heart. So, yeah, I like Pooh Bear in this one. Give me Bryan Battle, -180 on FanDuel. Again, a little bit chalky, but I've been liking some favorites last couple of cards, and I've been having some success. So hopefully that doesn't change this week. We get a card where like 9 dogs cash or something crazy like that. But yeah, I just actually watched back. I wanted to watch AJ Fletcher's last couple of fights again because last time I watched that was like 7-8 days ago. So, AJ's another guy, right? Short, stocky. He's gonna throw some power shots at you, some looping hooks. Pretty good jab, but not special from distance. I don't like the striking. He wants to wrestle. He wants to get on your hips, whether it's upper body, lower body, entries. He wants to get you down. He wants to beat you up on the ground. But we saw Themba, shout out Themba, my guy Themba, chilling with The Rock nowadays. Must be nice. But yeah, I mean, Themba was making his UFC debut, I believe, and not a grappler that I rate super highly. And he just made he controlled AJ Fletcher. Yeah, AJ Fletcher in some dominated positions in that fight. Took his back a couple of times, and Themba just made some very critical mistakes, some very low level mistakes, and got himself finished. Even the finishing sequence, I think he had his back and then just kind of slipped off, and AJ hit him with a big elbow, kind of dropped him or sat him down a little bit, and then finished him. So that's how that fight went. Bryan Battle, I don't worry too much about that. Obviously, Bryan Battle's gonna have that huge 10-inch reach advantage, but I like Bryan Battle's mindset when it comes to that. I heard him talk this week, and he's like, listen, I'm not going to put too much stock into that. AJ's dealing with that every single fight. And he was dealing with the same thing in the Themba fight. Exactly the same thing, a 10-inch reach disadvantage. So So he's a short guy. He's going to deal with that consistently, and Bryan Battle's not putting all the stock in that. But, obviously we've seen Bryan Battle, right? 2 out of his last 3 fights ended inside a minute. Very electric hands, dangerous kicks as well. And then the Renat fight kind of sandwiched in between those fights. Renat is a true killer. Renat is a true contender in his weight class. He is a monster. So we're going to hear his name a lot these next couple of years. Maybe on a way to a championship opportunity in the future. It's a stacked division, but we'll see. So Renat just kind of bullied him, and Renat is one of those guys who is not going to play around and not going to strike with you like AJ Fletcher will. Renat is going to come out from bell to bell, take you down, and beat you the fuck up on the ground. And he's very strong-willed in that game plan. So, I think there's going to be times where AJ tries to play on the feet. Bryan Battle's takedown defense is not elite, right? It's not anything that sparkles and pops off the page, but I think the length can help with that. His athleticism can help with that. I think he's way more live to win rounds 1 and 2, even though, I'm hearing a lot of people saying, on the Fletcher side, that even though they question his cardio, they think Fletcher can win rounds 1 and round 2. I don't think Fletcher's going to have a lot of success in an offensive wrestling game earlier in this fight. So if Bryan Battle stuffs the first 2 or 3 takedowns, I think that's going to heavily dissuade AJ from continue to try to execute that game plan. I also think Bryan Battle is going to absolutely butcher him when he's trying to come in. So dangerous knees, dangerous with the kicks. I think he's going to eat his calf alive, which obviously, slows down a wrestler. We'll talk about that in the Gamrot fight as well. But, I think Bryan Battle has all the tools in the world. I think this kid is very talented. He's had his trials and tribulations, like I mentioned in the UFC, but I think this is a good matchup for him. A little sneaky too. Maybe not that sneaky. I mean, we got some sharp guys in here, sharp chat, like Liam always says. Bryan Battle by sub. I think he's very live to sub Fletcher, especially as Fletcher gets more tired. Rounds 2, rounds 3. We all know what comes with that. Sloppy shots, head on the outside, your neck just out there, and with those long limb, lanky fighters, a sub is even more live. So I always say there's more than one way to sub a guy. You can be nasty from the bottom, nasty from the top, play jiu-jitsu, or you can hurt a guy and force him to make mistakes. So I think Bryan Battle is definitely live to sub Fletcher, finish his fight. I think he wins. So I will play the minus 180, play him straight, and play some finish props, especially the sub.
I like the convicted take, and I think we've got a take on the other side. So we'll kick it to my guy Jewish Bettor, and then I'll have to be the final tally. What do you think, brother?
Yeah, bro. What fight are we talking about again?
We're talking about.
No, I'm just playing with you, dude. Yeah, no, I like Collier in this spot. No, I'm just completely messing with you. No, for real. What fight are we on?
We're talking about the Bryan Battle fight, bro.
Nah, I'm just messing with you, bro, again. I gotta get with you. I gotta keep everybody guessing. It's like never let them know your next move, bro. Nah, I am on the other side here, bro. I'm on the AJ Fletcher spot here. I think he could have some success wrestling. Now that I kept you guys in suspense, I gotta give you my breakdown on the underdog. I just don't think everyone's saying this is gonna be a complete wash if it's on the feet, right? We saw him go like 15 minutes with Tresean Gore. Go back and watch that fight, man. It was pretty damn close. And I rate Fletcher's striking higher, man. He's had people hurt in the UFC. He had a flying knee knockout. Great way to come into the UFC on the Contender Series, albeit versus non-UFC competition. It still was a good flying knee victory early. Comes on the next fight versus Semmelsberger, completely switches the script on him. This guy just goes for the double leg, hits the knee tap, gets this guy to the mat. And what do you hear from the corner? What is this corner? What is the message from the coach to the fighter? Positional dominance. That's all they're saying. And that's what he was giving them. He was able to control Semmelsberger for that entire round. He'll just post up shop there in the half guard. And fighters love to do that because we could keep a hold of that knee. And, we have track of where our opponent's hips and bottom half of their body are going. Chip away. In that little small Apex ring, with no crowd, they're not going to be so quick to let the fighter up. Especially, Bryan Battle, he wasn't really looking to get back to his feet in the Renat fight, albeit short notice, but that's been a theme in the past. He's got, he's able to stuff a takedown here or there, but I think Fletcher drives through on the takedowns actually really well, and he knows his paths with the wrestling. And once he gets to the ground, he knows what he wants to do. Sure, Bryan Battle has a 10-inch reach advantage, but like you said, in the this is something Fletcher's had to deal with throughout his entire career. End of the day, I think this is 10-inch reach advantage on paper necessarily doesn't mean anything if you're going to be sitting there and boxing in the pocket. Bryan Battle does have good kicks. We saw him knock out Takashi Soto. I don't know what you want to take that win for. Super low level competition, in my opinion, compared to the guys that Fletcher was fighting. Sure, the Themba Gorimbo one was a little bit weird. I thought that fight was a little close, but that was on 10 days notice. We got to remember that. And he might have underestimated Themba Gorimbo there. Like, we all thought that was like the lock of the century, right? I don't know. I thought that was when I
had
watched
Themba Gorimbo plus 275.
Ooh, okay.
Value.
Okay. Okay, so you were kind of right there. I mean, you were 100%
Yeah, that shit was
right.
looking good. That shit was looking good early. Yeah, I bet you were excited with what you were seeing.
But,
dude, I bet Themba again. I'm up money on Themba. That's all I'll say. Everybody wants to fade my guy Themba. I was like, nah, it's Project rocking this up.
Amazing in that fight, bro. And I don't think anybody really expected that. It could have been like kind of when Natalia Silva fought Jazz Davicius. Just like, what the fuck is happening, bro? This is not what I thought this fighter was. And I had nothing on film that resembled this. So that's, part of it. I think, in the Lusa fight, we go back and say he faded as the fight went on, right? But that fight was in elevation, man, and he had Lusa hurt badly in the second round, even after taking some damage. So this is a guy who could take damage, continue to come forward with whatever you're giving him, and continue to strike. I think, he could last and live on the strike. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a clean knockout. Gabe Green, on the other end, just ran at this guy. He just ran at dude. And, of course, Bryan Battle was able to put him out. If you come in striking, running at somebody with no defense, no regard for the knockout ability of your opponent on the other end, you're going to go to sleep, bro, every single time.
You're going to cash that plus 1,100 for me, and I appreciate the shit out of it. Thank you, Gabe Green.
Hell yeah. The only worry I have, and Finesse the Book said it, sure, Bryan Battle could win this fight striking. He could even get a knockout. I think Fletcher has a hell of a chin from what I've seen, man. I think he's going to have a tough time knocking Fletcher out. So if you're depending on that, good luck. I think Bryan Battle will have to cash a sub from a front headlock. But if he's not able to get that and he's not able to defend the takedown, he might not get up, bro. Positional dominance, that's the message from the corner to Fletcher. But he is up at elevation now. That could help the cardio, though. That's something I did want to mention. You can shake your head, but you get in that altitude, and it's a different story, man. And I think he felt it when he fought there, and I think it could improve the cardio. And on the other end, I'm not thinking Bryan Battle's some cardio monster. This guy's in the third round with Bryan Battle, even in the second round, and the mouthpiece is falling out. So I got to take that for what it's worth as well. 90% of the money as well on Battle. A lot of Tapology votes. Goddamn near everybody in my DMs. I got people from, that don't even bet telling me Bryan Battle's going to win. Usually when that happens, I got to take a look at the other side. So maybe I'm crazy. I have a lot of underdogs. I have a lot of kind of contrarian plays on this card. But I do like AJ Fletcher here at the plus 150 or better. Yeah, plus 180 earlier this week. That was value.
Fair enough. So there you have it, guys. We got takes on different sides on this one. Coming in with my guy Finesse, unfortunately. Sorry, Jewish Bettor. We're disagreeing on this one, but that's the way it goes, right? And listen,
you've been oppressing my people long enough, man.
Hey, never that, brother. We the Irish. Who have we oppressed, brother? We're fucking an island unto ourselves. Everybody's coming to get some from us, so that's why we stay ready, so we don't have to get ready. To quote a once great man. Anyways, back to this fight, right? I've been betting on AJ Fletcher's underdog prices, like if it's him or the other guy every time in the UFC. Basically, that's just the way I've been operating to this point. But you go back and you look at the Angelusa fight. I cashed a nice ticket there, on Angelusa, right? He's plus 135 underdog in that spot. And, Angelusa is not a guy that inspires me, right? Angelusa is not a guy that I'm going to frequently be getting behind. I bet him against Jack Della in Contender Series. He had that head and arm choke cinched up. I felt like we had some questions about Jack's grappling at that time, especially. And, he posed some of those questions, but on the feet, he just didn't have it for him, right? And in that spot, he showed good durability as well, to your point. I think AJ Fletcher, he does a remarkable job striking, for a guy of his size. That's what I would give him, because he's a short king, right? Take nothing away from him. I love me a good short king in MMA, but I also look at him and I say, he's fought in 2019. We're not talking about ancient history. In 2019, he fought at 155 pounds. Okay. Bryan Battle, I don't think is making 155 fucking pounds, right? He fought at 185 against the Tresean Gores and these kind of guys, the Gilbert Urbinas, big guys, dude, like not small guys. Andre Petroski, he's a fucking hoss. He's a physical big man, strong as shit. He was able to outlast him in that spot. So I look at Bryan Battle and I say to myself, all right, what's the deal with this guy, Bryan Battle? Is he the truth? Is he the real deal? Everything I've heard from like training room stories is this guy is a fucking insane savage in the training room. Just like works harder than everybody, stays in the room, gets many more rounds, like just wants to be great. In terms of where he's training at, he's training with a lot of high-level pros. Bunch of guys come up and down, like a Matthew Semmelsberger, a guy that beat AJ Fletcher, goes down to get rounds with Bryan Battle, meets him down there. Like people come to train with him too. I think in Carolina, there's a lot of talent starting to converge. Just like in the U.S. generally, like a lot more economic activity starting to happen in the Carolinas, like Raleigh and these kind of places. Like you're just seeing North and South Carolina MMA starting to tick up a little bit. The Wonder Boys, the Chris Weidmans, people resettling there, creating more opportunities. You're seeing Jim O and a few other teams. They've got UFC level guys. So I think he's getting better training partners and situations over time. And I think the UFC is looking at him as like an actually good fighter from the Ultimate Fighter, which they're few and far between, right? Like how many of these guys have they signed that fucking suck? Juliana Miller, they're like, where can we bury her on a card before we have to cut her from the promotion, right? Like just they kind of are stuck with this format. Bryan Battle seems like one of the only guys who's got something really to give. And he said this week, it's a priority for me to represent the Ultimate Fighter and like show that this is not a show that's worthless. This is a show that's producing guys capable of winning championships. So when I look at the rest of the crop of these, terrible fighters, I'm like, man, maybe they actually are going to try and do something with Bryan Battle. You look at his matchmaking, I think you can see a little bit of that writing on the wall as well. Shout out to Greenbelt Warrior. Got to stop what I'm doing and just say, bro, $25 donor. You're an absolute savage. Thank you so much. Big blessings to you and yours. Absolutely grateful. It's always a blast to do this. It's my pleasure. It's my honor. And I appreciate you guys that watch it. Everybody that's sitting here just tuning in, I appreciate you. But dropping a dono like that, brother, just cheers to you. Much respect, much love. Thank you very much. Back to the breakdown, because I know that's what y'all are here for. I think of a guy like Bryan Battle as a guy who's got size, physicality. He's young, he's marketable, and they're changing like slight tweaks to the character, right? Like WWE, they were like, Pooh Bear, listen, Bryan, very nice, right? For the hardcores, we'll keep that. We'll keep that in rotation. We'll never let that die. But when you talk about how we sell this to the general public, Bryan the Butcher Battle. Now we're talking about alliteration. Now we're talking about great nickname. Now we're talking about he's a badass. Now we're talking about highlight reel finishes, knockouts, impressive stuff, submissions on the contender, or excuse me, on the Ultimate Fighter. You're seeing this guy's got multivariate ways to finish a fight. AJ Fletcher's going the distance, right? He showed that ability to hurt somebody with Onsalusa. Didn't show the finishing instincts to follow up and get him out of there. He should have. So I look at that and I say to myself, Bryan Battle, good finishing instincts, can take you out multiple different ways, can fight hard for 15 minutes, go over 100 significant strikes, up a weight class like he did against Tresean Gore. We're talking about these dynamics, right? Where with Jourdain and Ramos, maybe it doesn't play out. This one, we know. We saw it visually. We see it on paper. And also we know Bryan Battle, 185 to 170. It's a cut for this motherfucker to make 170, boys. It is not easy. And he said this is the best weight cut to date. You look at this guy, AJ Fletcher, he looks cut to freaking shreds. Like he is in the best shape I've ever seen the guy, for sure. Lauren Landau, great strength and conditioning coach. More power to him for that. But he's still in a suboptimal weight class in my view. I think he's got too much muscle to physically be out there for 15 hard minutes. Like if y'all have seen these guys that are super muscle bound, there's eventually a point of diminishing returns. And I think for him, he can make 155 with less muscle and be more effective because of his frame. I think that he cannot succeed at 170 pounds, period. And I think the UFC is trying to let him know that by giving him a big, long-ass dude. And I think, unfortunately, this is going to be one of the ones where the public eats. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel about this one. I think that the two ways I'd look to target this are Bryan Battle and the fight not to go the distance. Because I do think if Fletcher is to win this fight, he's probably going to have to surprise Bryan Battle here. I know some people think he's got the takedowns in the top time for a decision, and maybe that's possible, but that would be against my read on this fight. Bryan Battle was knocked down by Renat Fakhretdinov. I'm not going to ignore that from the sample size. He got hit cleanly on the chin and dropped there, but his recoverability was good. He never for a second looked for a way out in that fight. By the way, you would want to, right? Who doesn't want to quit that fight? He's not landing any strikes. He's getting dominated positionally every step of the way. Guys, he worked his way back up to his feet in every round. He forced this guy to return him to the mat, to beat the shit out of him, to pass. Like, he was like, no, you're either going to beat me cleanly or I'm going to win this fight. And so Renat was the better fighter. And that's off to him. Is AJ Fletcher a better fighter? I don't see that. I don't think he's a better fighter than Bryan Battle. Is he going to out-hard him? I don't think he's going to do that either. I think that he's got heart, he's got toughness, he's got will. I think Bryan Battles checks every one of those boxes too. Who's got better cardio? I think that's Bryan. So I'm like, where would Bryan lose this fight? I think the two ways he loses it is opportunistic submission, which I see as very small percentage chance, or getting knocked out on the feet. Because Fletcher, like I said, small guy. He does pack a punch. He did have Angelusa hurt. He is way better at striking than you'd think for a guy his size. And here's the other thing. We've seen Bryan Battle hurt before. I always talk about proof of concept. He doesn't get hurt frequently, but at 170 pounds, when he's cutting a lot of weight, when he's fighting a guy who's got, a big stocky frame, who's willing to throw, I do think there's a chance that AJ Fletcher could knock him out. But you look at the grappling, the pure grappling against Themba Gorimbo, and if he brings that level of grappling into this fight, he's getting submitted by Bryan Battle because Bryan is much better than that. And I'm saying, I like them. You guys heard it. I bet Themba. So I was there saying this last time out too, again, about AJ Fletcher. His positional grappling is not the best. He has some idea of what to do, but Matt Semmelsberger did nothing right. And he probably was like, yo, Bryan, teach me how to get off from the bottom. Because this guy literally was underneath, just sitting there, just controlling posture. And AJ Fletcher did nothing. So you have the best position in MMA. You are mounting somebody, and he then got put back into half guard, and then he did nothing. And I was just like, you blew it, dude. You had every position you want. You should have finished that fight in the first round, by the way. So I watched that back, and I was like, yo, Bryan Battle, if he mounts Matthew Semmelsberger in the first round, he finishes him. There's zero doubt in my mind there. He's relentless. He goes for it. So that for me is the other thing about AJ. He could win this fight. He's got some skills, but I didn't see enough of the things, checking enough of the boxes. I feel like he's got to finish this fight or he's going to be trending down over the course of the 15 minutes. So for me, give me Bryan Battle. I think the UFC likes this guy. I think they want to get behind him. I think they want to promote him. I think they'd love if he finishes this fight. So that's how I'm leaning here. But again, I think the dogs will have to win by finish. I just think the longer this fight goes on, the more the size, the intangibles, the amount of damage they're capable of doing and sustaining, I think will be borne out a little bit over time. And I like the Bryan Battle side. Do you have any pushback that you want to give, JB, or should we move to the next fight, brother?
No, I thought you brought up some great points, man. I just think, Fletcher's going to have to bring his wrestling shoes, and at Battle, he knows that's, been a problem in the past. So I think he's going to be prepared for that. But like I said, I just don't think this is going to be a complete wash in the striking. But great point about the weight class thing. I do believe he's completely in the wrong weight class. He could just be one of those guys that is like one real true like 160-pound fighter. Should be
He's
like
a Kevin Lee.
Right. So
yep.
Great points, my man. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Bryan Battle win the public get one. So high volume card for me.
Cheers.
I like to catch this one, but we'll see.
I love me a good underdog, brother. So nothing but love for you. Best of luck to you. But I'm probably going to either roll with Bryan Battle officially here or just, maybe the fight not to go. But those are the things that I'm a little more bullish on. Next up, we've got Marina Rodriguez taking on Michelle Waterson-Gomez. And I've kind of done a little bit of a flip-flop on this fight. Not to say that I bet on this fight either, but I'm just going to be very brief about this and say, why is this fight happening again? I can't answer that question. But it doesn't seem to me like the UFC gives a shit about Marina Rodriguez. She basically had a great win streak together where she could have fought for a belt. And they didn't do that. They put her in there with Amanda Lemos. Amanda Lemos gets the jump on her. Then Amanda Lemos fights for the belt, right? And I think that they were more than happy that happened because Marina Rodriguez kind of has this way of killing off fun contenders like Amanda Hebos on the way up and then not producing, either dominant performances like against Yan Xiaonan where she, probably didn't even deserve to win, but if she did it by an inch. She won by a hair in that spot as a big favorite. Then she lost 2 fights in a row. She won the fight against Waterson, right? So that's the one in between. And that's the one where you think, man, are they just trying to get her another win? Like, hey, let's run this again and just get Marina any win that we can. But they're both on the wrong age of 35. Neither one of them is like blowing up like, oh my God, for marketing purposes, we need this girl. But I just look at it and I say, like, you've got one girl who's got 1 million followers and like people really care about her in Karate Hottie. And she probably won her last fight and got done wrong by the judges. It was certainly very close against a young girl who's still trying to improve and get better. Whereas Marina Rodriguez just looked like a girl who was pretty complacent in her last fight. And I bet Verna there. It was for a half a unit. I kind of regretted that I didn't go heavier in that spot, So I bet Michelle Waterson the night she lost to Amanda Lemos. And I felt like a square, right? But you go back and look at that. Like, she was competing in the grappling and then just got outpositioned by girls way stronger, way more physical. And by the way, you see what happened when she went against Marina? She was way more strong and way more physical than her too. Just like I said before the fight, just like when I bet Amanda Lemos there. So I have had good success on Marina Rodriguez fights by and large, except for when I had Amanda Hebos in a chalk parlay. That was early in my betting days. And, minus 300 on Hebos would not be seeing my slate anytime, now. But you're just looking back at lessons learned over time. And I think Marina Rodriguez is just not good chalk, period. I think you look back at the stats, they back that up. So I'm going to pull up right now the previous performance in odds range. This is a document I make every single week to try and give myself an advantage. 3-3 as a UFC favorite for a negative 30% ROI. That's the facts about Marina. So again, could she win this fight? Yes. Could you win this fight if you bet on her? Yes. But I just look at this fight and I say, like, the UFC's kind of throwing a dog a bone. Like, yo, if you go out there and finish, maybe we'll have a conversation about where you fit in the title mix again. But like, barring a finish here, I think the UFC could give a fuck less who wins this fight. And if the girl with 1 million Instagram followers managed to pull it off with a greasy decision, I don't think they'd be crying in their coffee. I'll tell you that. And I don't think anybody's going to be betting it either. So that's how I feel about this one. Finesse, how do you feel, brother?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go too much into depth. I should have probably locked this in earlier in the week. I wanted to just parlay Marina with Jacob Malkoun. I wanted to do that. It was much more playable earlier in the week, but now I'm seeing minus 170, minus 180. So I have to look for fancy kind of way to play this lay. Maybe add Marina money line, maybe over 1.5 rounds, over 6.5 minutes, around that, same game parlay it on DK, get it to around minus 140. These two women have already fought. We saw the way that went. Marina picking up the W. I think it's going to go the exact same way. I believe Karate Hottie's like 1-6 or 1-5 in her last 6 or something like that. Getting up there in age. Both of these women are getting up there in age. But if this fight doesn't hit the mat, I see relatively no chance that Waterson wins this fight. Great side kicks, right? Great leg kicks. Doesn't present much with the hands in terms of striking. Marina's going to absolutely pick her apart in the striking, just like in the first fight. I think this is going to be a relatively mirror image of the first fight, just over 15 minutes instead of 25 minutes. So, yeah, which I think favors Marina as well. I think she's butchering on her feet, even if Marina does kind of end up on her back. Waterson does not have the best control on the top, and like we talk about all the time, the way the judges are scoring these type of fights. So, yeah, I truly believe Waterson's on her way out. Marina, I still think has room to grow, maybe room to make not to grow skills wise because she's already up there in age, but maybe to make a semblance of a run, at the title. That sounds even ridiculous to say, but yeah, I think Marina wins this fight. I'm happy to parlay her even at this price. I do think the price is off. I mean, I don't think Marina should be north of minus 300, so you won't hear any arguments from me with that. But I think both of these fighters are going to win in terms of Jacob Malkoun and Marina. So therefore, I have no problem parlaying them together. So two chalky favorites. I don't really like parlaying. That'll be my only parlay this week.
Eminem.
Say it again.
Eminem. Yeah. Malkoun and Marina.
That shit went right over my head. I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
It's 2 in the morning. My bad, bro.
Yeah, I wish I could laugh with y'all, but I should work completely over my head. But yeah, I think both of these fighters are gonna win. Parlay them together, add a piece, whatever you want to do. But Marina wins this fight.
Fair play, my man. Jewish Bettor, what do you got, brother?
But it don't matter who you put in, because even if you put in Michelle, it's Eminem, baby. Because you got Eminem, it's Michelle and Marina. It's probably way past my bedtime.
Oh, Eminem, Malkoun, and okay, I see.
No,
I think I see now.
you got it, bro. Come on,
Yeah,
man.
I think I'm
All
getting.
right. No, I'm just messing with you, my dude. I would love to give you that favorite and that dog, whatever, for that DFS lineup. I saw the dude just post that in the comments. But for this fight, I'm gonna keep it short, simple, sweet. This matchup already happened. Good probability is gonna be Marina again. Could she do it in more impressive fashion? I think she's going to be looking for a finish here. Liam kind of alluded to this. It's not going to be really that good for her if she just goes out and gets a decision win again. What is that proof? She already did it. It does nothing for her career whatsoever to promote herself, further her. Does she just not care? Like, what is her manager thinking here? This is not going to further. This is just another good win versus a good name that she's already got before. It's a good rematch, but I think there's possible Marina finishes here via the knockout if Karate Hottie doesn't get this to the ground. This is a girl who has legitimate striking, legitimate power behind her striking. Although she did get knocked out by Lemos finish, she's obviously slowed down a little bit. We're not 100% sure where her head's at this point in her career. Is there a world where I see Waterson, getting some takedowns, winning 2 of the 3 rounds? Marina's getting a little bit older as well. Like before, it was one person was older, one person's younger. Is different than both people are over the age of 35. Give me Marina here, but if Waterson was like plus 300, I'm taking that shot all day, baby. It's women's MMA, and there's a chance she takes her down.
I completely agree. The thing that I don't like about Marina is just that she's pretty reliant on staying on the feet. You look at that Amanda Hebos fight. I know it was square, right? I'll acknowledge that hindsight. But I think Amanda just kind of had a really boneheaded, sequence in that fight where she takes her down. She's looking good in the first round, comes out in round 2, doesn't take her down, gets knocked the fuck out. So it's just like, okay, yeah, Amanda can't stand with her. She got knocked out by Poliana Viana on the Brazilian regional. She just can't stand with good women, long women that have some power. Not a good situation for her. By the way, bet Macy Barber by knockout against Amanda Hebos. One of my favorite fighters on the women's side of things, but it's just like, she doesn't have a great chin. So you can acknowledge that, right? But it's like, you look at Marina, she's not the most prolific finisher. A lot of times she's got to kind of let the fights materialize over the full amount of time. But she's got defensive responsibility in the grappling, broadly speaking. What's her name? Mackenzie Dern, not able to get the finish when she had a couple opportunities on the ground in that spot. So there's definitely some positives there, some things to like. However, I do think that, Verna Jane DeRoba was out there going for positional control. She was kind of trying to shut things down. But Amanda Lemos was willing to trade with her a little bit and was able to find some spots and some opportunities to open up on the feet. I feel like you look at this fight and Karate Hottie, what she's saying in interviews is like, listen, I've been letting what other people say get to me and what they think get to me and talking about these last couple of fights. She's like, but it's going to be in the Apex. It's low key. That's good for me. I'm going to go out there and go my game. She seems like she's very confident and knows what she wants to do here. And I think if she goes out there and tries to wrestle this girl for her life, I think she could actually win. She's been billed as the Karate Hottie and all these things. And for a long time, that's what she tried to do. And she sucks at striking in the UFC level, in the UFC context, because of her size, right? She's just not landing very much. And that's going to be hard to be effective. But I believe she outlanded her last opponent. If not, she was within a few strikes of her opponent, who's a younger girl. And I feel like Marina slowing down just a touch. So both of these girls, a little bit slower, a little bit past their best. What if she just spams takedowns? And by the way, over 5 rounds, you're not going to want to spam takedowns, right? You're like, I might have to be out here for 25 more minutes defending punches. Whereas now she's like, I have 15 minutes for my career. If I lose here, it's over. So it's like, I better go out there and just shoot takedowns. Here's the thing that gets to me. Calvillo, bro, 10-8'd this girl on the ground. And this was a long time ago. But she's never been good on the mat. She's just been good at dealing with people that want to submit her. She will not get submitted. She's very good at position blocking here, this and that. But I do think that her positional grappling is suspect to the point where that's why Verna was able to get that win, and I bet her last time. But I also just think, like, Michelle Waterson, if she got a brain, she's going to come out here, try and wrestle for her life and grease a split decision against a girl who can give up some bad moments, positions, opportunities to her opponents. So I do think for me, either getting contrarian with a finish prop, like somebody gets the finish here, or getting contrarian with the underdog would be my play. I do think they're going to need a parlay buster. This seems to me like a fight that's just out of place. I always talk about stopping Brazilian hate. I like doing that with young girls, right? Ketlin Vieira against 38-year-old Holly Holm. That's what I like doing. I don't like doing it with the older, Brazilian chicks against, girls on the come up, or girls that are 1 million Instagram followers and just as popular, and rematch of a fight where she did the JOB, over 5 rounds, but got 1 round last time out. So I just feel like this is one where, she gets 1 more round. That's it. She wins. It's a 3-round fight. She got 1 last time in 5. So it's like she gets 2, she wins. For me, that's enough to just say I'm a pass on this one, but it's not a fight I feel very bullish on. And I did flip-flop. If y'all listen to my first look, I give you guys my gut feeling. I was like, if Marina doesn't finish this fight, she's probably got to move on from title contention. And I still feel that way. But it's like, maybe she has moved on from title contention already, and I just had to go back and do some research to realize. So I do think she can win this fight. She's certainly, the deserved favorite. But again, we're talking about big prices for a girl that I don't think is super keen on finishing, hasn't proven to be the most dynamic finisher in the UFC. And at 36 years of age, the barrier to improve is probably starting to close in on her a little bit. So interesting fight, compelling. I hope somebody gets finished so it's interesting. But next up, we got Bryce Mitchell, Thug Nasty, taking on Dan Ige. I like to look at the face-offs, guys, because sometimes it tells me things that I didn't see. Maybe I'm dead wrong about Charles Jourdain, but again, that I can only give you guys what I see and just try and be honest about it. I've been talking about liking the Dan Ige side this week, thinking he was live. I know Bryce has a lot of things going on outside of the octagon in his life with his girl, with the gossip and all this shit. He's, by the way, going to Vegas to corner his cousin on Contender Series. That didn't go well. Could be a little bit of an emotional letdown. All sorts of different things factored into that. But then I saw the 2 guys next to each other, and I'm like, shit, Bryce looks big. Like, Bryce looks like a big guy right now next to Dan Ige. And, like, when you're a grappler and you want to take people down and hold them down, be physical and stay on top of them and horse them around, being bigger than them is a good starting point, right? It's like a great thing to be. And I do think that Bryce Mitchell, he doesn't do anything perfect, but I go back and watch that fight against Ilia Topuria. He had a lot of the right ideas. If he was actually sick, and sometimes fighters make excuses and they lie and bullshit, which I think is very possible. But also, I believed Aljo when he said that he was injured in the first Jan fight. And that made me a lot of fucking money because everybody else didn't believe him. And they were like, no, like he just sucks and Jan's going to wash him. And I was like, I don't know. Like, have you guys ever seen Aljo look physically weak? Like he can't grab a hold of somebody. He literally grab a hold of the guy and just let go. I was like, that's not him. That's not Aljo. So say what you will, like at his best, that's just not him. And I feel like when I'm looking at a guy like this and Bryce Mitchell at his best, I feel like that wasn't him. Because I don't think Bryce Mitchell at his best quits like that. Because I feel like he did straight up quit against Ilia Topuria at a certain point. He was like, this isn't going my way. I'm starting to tire out. I don't like how it's going. Because he defended well the first couple times that they got into those grappling exchanges. And then Ilia was like, get over it. He literally did a Mortal Kombat. Get over here and just ripped him back to his back. And he was like, all right, fuck it. I lost. Like you could see on his face. He's like, all right, fuck it. You see it in wrestling sometimes. The guy's just like, pin me. Like, we figured it out. It's all good. Just get me out of here. That's what it was to me. But I feel like now he's trying to mulligan, right? He's like, put me back in. And you see he pulled out of a fight. I think that was the right move. Like if you can pull out of an Evloev fight and get an Ige fight, y'all saw how it went when those 2 guys went. One's a little bit superior to the other. And especially with the wrestling and the grappling, which is where Bryce theoretically could have some success. So I look at this fight on paper and I'm like, I wanted to be the only guy who likes Dan Ige this week. Doesn't seem to be that way. It does seem like Dan Ige is starting to get some popularity as an underdog pick. I'm certainly seeing people on both sides of the fight, but heard a lot of people giving bullish takes on Ige, and he's a functional fighter. He's not bad at anything. He's very good at keeping the fight upright, throwing his shots to the body, but he's not winning by huge margins every time out. Sometimes he's relying on big knockdowns, big moments, and his finishing equity isn't always there later in fights. So I think of this as a difficult fight to call because if Bryce Mitchell is getting takedowns here, he's probably going to look like a hindsight big favorite. He's a guy with good positional control on top. He's not easy to get away from. And you look at what Ilia had to do. He was doing everything right. Like people that know wrestling, know game, like on an inside level, they're like, Jesus Christ, like he's inside, re-grabbing his own wrist, turning and facing. It's like everything he was doing was perfect sequencing. That's a really hard guy to beat. That's the number one contender in the division. It's going to be hard to beat that guy, and he was aligned very closely with him. So that tells me that the market really respected Bryce Mitchell going into that fight. And he says he's sick. So it's like, guy who's sick comes in there, gives an honest account of himself, but definitely was the worst man on the night. On the feet, that was where the glaring, differences were. But Bryce landed a couple big power punches himself in that fight. And I was like, wow, I forgot about this. Like you have a memory of a fight. That memory is Ilia Topuria murdering him. And that is, broadly speaking, a summary of what happened. But there were moments for Bryce in there where he didn't look like he was completely a fish out of water. He had a takedown. He did get on top of him late. But again, we talk about sequencing in a fight. He got on top of him late in the round, spent some energy to do it. And then by the time he came out in round 2, Ilia was able to just barrel down on him faster and hurt him, by the way, dropped him. But his recoverability was pretty good there too. He got dropped by a big power puncher and just got right back up and tried to start wrestling him again. So I think of Bryce Mitchell as a tough guy. I think of him as a complete idiot. But I also think that, like, it doesn't matter. How many Rhodes Scholars have you seen win inside the octagon? It's like, that's not only what this is about. Bryce Mitchell goes out there and does what he's told a lot of the times as well, which is get on top, go for takedowns, punch this guy in the face, and win the fight. So I think he's fought the worst level of competition, but I think he has the favorable style here. So it's a really tricky fight for me. I feel like this is a fight where Dan Igue's got a lot to prove. The one thing I liked from Dan Ige, he said, I'm stepping away from my management obligations and roles in this lead up, to focus fully on fighting while I have this short career to make a run. And he is riding some momentum, a couple big wins in a row leading into this fight, whereas Bryce Mitchell, hard to say where his confidence is going to be at coming off of that last fight. So another fight where I've kind of felt my gears switching from being bullish on the underdog here to leaning more towards the favorite. And for that reason, I'm probably going to end up passing on this fight, which disappoints me. I wanted to bet on this fight, but I just feel like there's a compelling case to be made for both guys. I don't want my case to come from what happens outside the octagon, but I do feel like that's kind of what I was relying on a little bit with the Ige side of things. Like Bryce has all this shit going on and Ige, he's putting it all together, but like just style for style, Ige has always struggled with guys that could take him down and mix that in. And when guys engage him on the feet, he's dangerous and he can go with anybody, but he just is a guy that can be taken down. It's happened to him multiple times throughout the course of his career, and we haven't seen like a great answer to it. So he does train with the right guys. He does train with a world-class team. But if he's not been able to put it together at this point, and he's been fighting high-level guys, and he's been doing it for a long time, it does make me concerned that maybe he's just never going to turn that corner. Maybe he's just never going to be good at wrestling guys at this level. And if that's the case, like Bryce Mitchell should win the fight. So, Jewish Bettor, how do you feel, my brother? What do you got on the co-main event of the evening?
Yeah, I think this is a good matchup to see where both guys at, and I think that's where the UFC is thinking, right? Like, can Ige stop the grappling? Because that's been the problem in the past. Like, that's going to be the thing that's going to get him to that highest level, because it's not the striking that's a problem. The guy has beautiful distance management. He controls the octagon very well, especially that small octagon. He's has a hometown advantage as well. This is a UFC Apex card. He's super at home there. It's probably could walk to the Apex if he truly wanted to from his gym. So definitely a hometown advantage in my opinion here. Very comfortable, like I said, with that small octagon. And if you watch, like I think it's his coach Eric Nixick, he has a instructional. I have it on a cage control. It's cage control, how they cut off the choke points on the cage. And I think one of the dudes, I think it's MMA AI, kind of posted a video going over how Strickland was using some of those strategies. And Danny Ige really listens to what his coaches say. I will say that, because he's the UK in the video. On top of that, it's kind of just watch his fights. It's straight out of the playbook. He's just listening to what his coaches are telling him. That at the same time, this is what Bryce Mitchell is going to be wanting to look to do in this fight, is grapple. And that's the problem that Ige has had in the past. Thing is with Bryce is what I don't think people realize is his wrestling technique is pretty high level. He'll chain stuff together. This guy, for as high level of wrestler he is, has legitimate good jiu-jitsu when it hits the mat. He will transition from that top three-quarter mount. I think, what's his name? Cormier likes to kind of call it like the KC control, if I'm not mistaken. But this guy's transitioning from arm triangle to three-quarter mount to truck rolls to twisters This guy's jiu-jitsu for the level of wrestling he has is honestly impressive, and he's not a fish out of water on the feet either. He's gonna throw big power shots, and the thing I think with Ige is he's gonna be caught off a little guard because he's gonna be worried about the wrestling. That's gonna be hard for him to open up with the hands, and that's gonna open more shots on the takedowns. I think for Bryce Mitchell to go ahead and take this guy down. When you don't have the option to put the fight on the mat, that's very daunting because then you have to always think about this constant threat of Mitchell taking you down. It's not the other way around. So, that all being said, I think Mitchell is the rightful favorite here. I think he's got that farmer strength. He's going to use the grappling here to probably get Ige down at points of this fight. And, is Ige going to be able to finish him? I think Ige has finishing ability, but who has it really been against? Like Gavin Tucker? Who's the guys he's finishing other than that? It's not
Danny
good.
Henry.
Right. And he's getting
The GOAT Danny Henry, bro. Are you kidding, bro? Future UFC champion Danny Henry.
That's crazy, bro. Yeah, nah. This dude, he ain't finishing much. Wasn't able to finish Landwehr in the last one either, which I thought would have been a good spot for him to get a finish possibly. And didn't even do it there. I think this is a step up in competition. We're getting a spot. Maybe Bryce lost his last fight, but other than that, he's been pretty damn good as a favorite as well. So
who would be favored to beat Ilya right now? That's the other thing. It's like besides Volk, Max Holloway, like, is there another fighter that would be favored right now against Ilya Topuria at featherweight? I don't think so.
I think his
recency bias.
This is a rightful favorite spot. You can maybe even bump him up a little more, in my opinion. A lot of people taking the Ige side. So Finesse got eyes wide here. I believe he might be on the dog. Let him know, Finesse, bro. Let him know why you on it.
Let us have it, brother. Because I honestly don't think that it should be wider either, because there is uncertainty on the Bryce Mitchell side. That's all I would say, like the outside the octagon stuff in terms of injuries as well as narrative. Like narrative-wise with the girlfriend and the whatever, but I also just meant like he had pulled out of a fight due to injury. So there was a few things that I felt like kind of capped his upside here as a favorite. But to say that, like, I think it opened a lot closer. So there's been some correction in the market. Finesse, what do you think, brother?
JB, you wanted to add something?
No, I want to hear what you have to say, bro.
Yeah, so did you say that this is a step up for Ige?
In the last fight, from his last fight, yes. Yes, from his last fight, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, which I agree from his last fight, but I mean, just absolute murderer's row in terms of competition. Evloev, Chanja, and people are, I've seen this all week, people poking holes in Dan Ige's resume. At one point lost, I think it was 4 out of his last 5 at one point, only win being Gavin Tucker, but Calvin Kattar, Korean Zombie, Josh Emmett, Evloev, Nate Landwehr is not top of the barrel, but I don't think bottom of the barrel either. Super tough guy. Had him hurt. I think he finishes a lot of guys in that spot, but Landwehr is tougher than a motherfucker. So he survived in that spot. So yeah, I like Dan Ige, especially at this price. Plus 180, plus 185. I'm seeing. I know the line opened up much shorter on the Mitchell side. I know people got in early at minus 140, minus 145. I still would have kind of liked Ige in that spot, to be honest with you. And now I'm getting an even friendlier price. I was hoping to just continue to let the money keep pouring in on Mitchell and take a better price on Ige. Liam, you brought it up. Bryce said that he was sick in his last fight. He also said the earth is flat, right? He also said a lot of fucking things. He said gravity ain't real. So I don't know how much to put into that. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that at all. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Bryce is off his fucking rocker. I don't like putting a lot of stock into that type of stuff. You can put stock into distractions, ex-girlfriends, all of that type of stuff. And while that can be a distraction, you still got to step in the cage in your underwear and punch each other in the face. So I don't put much merit into that. But yeah, like you boys said, we know what Bryce wants to do. He's very good at it: wrestling, offensive wrestling, grappling. I just trust Dan Ige's grit. I trust his mettle. I trust his mentality. Right. I think Liam, you said this as well. Just the mental space he's in right now. It seems super focused. It seems like he's finally has everything together. Right after that losing streak he was on, knows what he's fighting for. I think he has like one or two kids. He might only have one kid, and it's a young kid. So he talks about his kid a lot and stuff like that. So knows what he's fighting for in his athletic prime, and I think he has the weapons to stop Bryce Mitchell. I've had this weird feeling all week that Bryce Mitchell is going to get knocked out on his spot. Don't really have a lot of hard evidence that I can tell you guys to Bryce has proven to be tough to finish. I know he got sub last time out, but tough guy, right? Super tough guy. But I think Dan Ige wins this fight. I think he finishes him. I really do. I think it's a round 2, round 3 finish. I don't like Ige's takedown defense either, like you boys were pointing out. But I think he's a much better grappler than he is a defensive wrestler. So I think if he does wind up on bottom, which he will, his ass is going to hit the mat. His back is going to be flat against the mat at some point during this fight. I trust his grit and his will and his get-up game to get his ass back up, which can kind of dissuade, wrestlers. Maybe not a guy like Bryce because he can be relentless at times, but it's not a competition on feet for me. Dan Ige hits like a fucking truck. I think he, you guys talked about this as well, training out at Extreme Couture, that championship vibe in the gym. Eric Nixick is an absolute genius. So these boys know what Bryce wants to do. So I think this is a major step up for Bryce. I know that's kind of a weird take because he just fought Ilya, and Ilya's, right there in terms of championship fight. But overall, looking at his resume, it's another really, really, really tough test for Bryce. And I don't think he passes that test. So I think Dan Ige is gonna eat his calves up. I think he's gonna throw front kicks, throw front knees, stuff like that. I don't mind Ige by submission. What was Ige by submission like 16-1? If you guys have it in front of you, feel free to correct me, but I think it was 16-1. I might have been looking at a different fight, but I think, yeah, that's what I thought. 16-1. I couldn't believe that price. I know Bryce is the wrestler and the grappler, but anytime there's going to be heavy grappling exchanges and opportunities to be in a clinch and the guy wanted to wrestle, I'm always going to look at that line for his opponent. So, like I said, multiple ways to sub somebody, whether that's hurting them or Bryce just getting sloppy for that 1 second in knee. So, yeah, I like Ige in this spot. Kind of a numbers thing for me, but also I just love Dan Ige. I love everything about him. He's made me a shit ton of money in the past. Very, very well rounded in my opinion. At a great camp. Strickland talked to, and even Adesanya, both guys came out and talked about how Eric Nixick, was a big reason behind Sean winning that fight. Just the live play-by-plays and kind of walking him through situations and shutting Adesanya down. So Eric Nixick is a big thing, I think, in this fight. These boys know what Bryce wants to do. So, yeah, I know Bryce just got stopped, so it may be a little bit of a hot take, but I think Dan wins this fight. So, obviously, the much bigger bet is going to be Dan moneyline, but I'm going to sprinkle some inside the distance props. I think, hot take, I'm just gonna roll with it and plant my flag in the ground. I think Dan Ige finishes Bryce.
Oh, shit. So there you have it. An underdog play with some conviction as well. This one has actually bounced all over the place. If you look offshore, it opened at plus 230 on Bet Online. It's now down to about a plus 172 at a pretty sharp outfit. So they've definitely adjusted their number here a little bit, but that also means if they're opening at plus 220, they probably booked this like minus 275 or so on Bryce at open. So they invited some action on the dog, but then they respected what came in a little bit, certainly bumped the number down. I think it should have been a slightly more competitively lined fight, certainly than that original number. But I also don't know that there's meat on the bone at this point, because I do think stylistic matchup, I lean towards Bryce. Stuff that's going on outside the cage makes me just lean towards pass. So fascinating fight, very compelling. I kind of lean towards this one going over as well from an instinctual standpoint. Dan Ige is very tough, right? He was submitted in 2012, I believe, as an amateur, hasn't been finished as a professional to this point. That's one thing that you love about the guy. He's very durable, very hard to get out of there, and also good recoverability. He got hurt to the body by Edson Barboza, and it's one of the most savvy things I've seen in a fight. I talk about this every so often, but he like wrapped him up and then just fell flat back. Like Dan Ige was like, I am hurt so bad, and just grabbed him and like fell to the ground and knew he could keep himself safe there. So he kind of just like wrote it out for a second and he was like, okay, I'm good, and got back up to his feet. I feel like that shows the maturity and the kind of like experience and presence within the fire that you see from a guy like Ige. But sometimes he just gets a little too comfortable in that defensive role, playing defense well and then not doing enough offense to win the fight. Like Calvin Kattar. Calvin didn't run away with it, but he just did enough to beat him in most of the rounds. So I think he's a competitive guy with everybody, but I would think he needs to turn it up and show a better performance here to beat somebody like Bryce. So I'm rooting for him. He's invested a lot, similar birthdays as well, another June birthday. So shout out to our guy, Dan Ige, putting it on, but he's got his hands full. So it should be a hell of a fight at 145. Featherweight's on display all over this card. So good scrap. But last but not least, guys, we've got the main event of the evening. Hell of a fight between two elite lightweights, Rafael Fiziev taking on Mateusz Gamrot. We've got elite camps as well represented, Tiger Muay Thai, I believe Killcliff as well when he's training in the States for Rafael Fiziev. On the other side, American Top Team, a guy with great Polish wrestling. One of the things I was talking about with an analyst in the DMs was the fact that, like, from a wrestling background myself, I have always done quite well defensively in wrestling. I like inviting people in, shoot on me, let's create these exchanges, because I felt like I'd do better in those exchanges if I can make them go a little bit longer, if I can look to create some scrambles and throw people to their back, mix it up. But one of the styles that always troubled me personally was low singles. I'd wrestle these guys from Pennsylvania. I'd lose every time because they would go low single, take me down, and then they would tilt me. And I didn't have good reactions to that series. It was like really instructive for me. And then I went to wrestle in Ohio in college. So I kind of had to learn new styles of wrestling, more depth around this. And in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, it's just a more frequent attack. In New York, people were out here a little bit at a lower level at times, throwing each other upper body, doing these kind of things where you see these high level operators, they go to these single legs that are harder to defend, harder to see coming, and harder to stop. And I feel like the reason Gamrot has so much success as a wrestler in MMA is that he shoots low single legs. He's one of the only guys that does it. It's hard to do. It's hard to time. It's scary shooting towards somebody's leg when they can kick, knee, do things to hurt you on your way in. And we've seen Gamrot punished for takedown attempts before. Jalen Turner saw him coming, dropped him with a right hand. Like, it's happened. He's been dropped in a number of his recent fights, but his recoverability is outstanding and his positioning is very good. Like, when he gets dropped, it's right in on the low single leg, hiding his head, making it hard for you to follow up. And his strength is unbelievable. There's times where it looks like he's in a bad position. His back is bent. It looks like he shouldn't be able to finish or get strong, as we call it in wrestling. And he gets strong anyway. He recommits the hips and just throws somebody overhead. Like, he is a freakishly strong lightweight in my view. You also see that in his Kimura finish of Jeremy Stevens, where he almost ripped the guy's arm off his body. He's got clear physical upside as a fighter. And I do think of this fight as, Fiziev, dangerous striker, excellent body kicks, excellent power. I think that's where he can get to Gamrot. Gamrot's been dropped in these recent fights. Fiziev has nasty body shots. He's got great power upstairs with the hooks. He's got a lot to offer on the feet. But this is the best wrestler and grappler I think that he's ever fought. Looking back at it, RDA, I felt like he was very one-note in his wrestling approach there. I bet Fiziev ITD. And I just thought that he kind of was getting stuck on the same failing loop of takedowns. He would go to that scoop grip on the outside, kind of go head in, try and double off, and it just never worked. And when it did work, he would sit him to the fence, but then he was very ineffective from on top. And I don't think Gamrot's the best top position grappler I've ever seen in the UFC, but I do think that he can create more opportunities to get on top than most guys in the UFC. And he can create a dynamic, finishing sequence. We've seen that before. So I just think of him as a guy that he can fight hard for 25 minutes. He can really mix it up with anybody. He's not afraid to get hit. He went on 2 weeks' notice, fought Jalen Turner, who's like the boogeyman of the division, very big, very tall, very long, awkward, good jiu-jitsu, good striking. Nowhere he's got glaring holes except maybe the cardio. And he outlasted him over 15 minutes there in a really hard fight when he was on 2 weeks' notice. In this fight, the only thing that was really scaring me on the Gamrot side was I thought he had a staph infection at the beginning of the week. He had, on his chest, two pimple looking things. And I was like, oh God, is this going to be another one of these, situations? Somebody comes in on antibiotics, they underperform. When I saw him weigh in today, he looked perfectly fine, clear. And he also looked to be in phenomenal shape. So for me, I think it's a great fight on paper. I think it's a hell of a fight between these two guys, but I lean towards it going over. I lean towards it going the distance. I think they're both very high level and hard to finish. And if that's the case, give me the guy who's going to attempt 25 takedowns, mix it up on the feet. And by the way, I did see the right striking tools on display in his last fight. Jalen Turner, long, tall guy, don't want to get hit from far away. So he chipped away at that calf until Jalen Turner became a little bit easier to take down. And I think he's going to try and do that here as well. Maybe he gets knocked out. Maybe he finally pays for it. He's been hurt a couple times. But I think until proven otherwise, Gamrot has won a lot of fights. He has done it while he has not always felt his best. He's done it when he's underperformed at times. So I think of this fight and I say Guram Kutateladze is the archetype that a lot of people are bringing up. But I've heard before from a lot of people in his camp, things like that, on interviews publicly. So this is not just like myself. I've heard this from other people publicly, where they said Gamrot was hurt, he was sick, he should have never taken the fight, but he's a savage. So he said, I'll take it anyway. And he went out there and fought 15 hard minutes with Guram, who, by the way, was doing just fine in his last fight until he started to gas out a little bit down the stretch. Guram's a good fighter, but he just doesn't have the greatest cardio. Gamrot fought him as a shell of himself. He lost a fight. It happens. He was minus 300 in that spot. He's a dog in this spot. He's been a dog one other time in the UFC. He's been favored every other fight. He won the only time he was a dog. It was against Arman Sarukian, who's a fucking hammer that nobody wants to fight. So I look at all that and I just say to myself, if you give me plus money on that guy, I either have to take that or I have to take my hands off this. And the truth is, I was looking at what's his name, Fiziev, across a lot of boosts today. That's the one thing that I put together a boost document every time for these UFCs as much as I can. I saw him by KO, by decision, like all these different ways to win boosted. And I was like, whoa, that just seemed a little bit alarming to me. Not to say that there's not Gamrot boost, not to say that that's fully predictive. I think that more often than not, they pay the boost in the main event more than they pay them in any other fight on the card. So again, take that for whatever it's worth. But just looking at some things that give me pause on the Fiziev side, I think he's a very popular side this week as well. And I haven't seen the line reacting accordingly. So for me, I bet Fiziev last time out against Justin Gaethje. I think in hindsight, it was a bad bet at the price. I think it was like minus 230. I thought he won the fight anyway. But I look at that fight and I say he fights within a pretty thin margin. And I did think in that fight in particular, he was slowing down a bit. And that was a lot of damage. That was a hard fight. But when you're starting to slow down and give up takedowns to Justin Gaethje, who never attempts them ever, and I know he can wrestle, but he's not good at it at MMA. Like, you go back and look, you see he doesn't take many people down, and when he does, he doesn't hold anybody down. So I think of him as a guy who's like got wrestling in name only, like wrestling credentials on paper, but not in reality. And so I thought that was a mildly concerning visual, where this guy Gamrot is a way better wrestler in my view. Like if they went out there and wrestled, I would take Gamrot cleanly against Gaethje. So that's my opinion. I've wrestled for a long time. I could be dead wrong. So I like Gamrot or passing on this fight. I think it's a hell of a fight, and I think Gamrot is less likely to finish. So I do understand why Fiziev favored, but maybe like minus 120. I just feel like these guys are both hammers, both really good fighters. I wouldn't be anxious to fade either one of these guys long term. Jewish Bettor, how do you feel, brother? Main event, great fight.
It's a beautiful fight, bro. Another striker versus grappler here. We've had a few of them recently. One with Sean O'Malley versus Aljamain Sterling. Saw how that went. Sean O'Malley was able to use that lateral movement to really stifle the takedown attempts of Aljamain Sterling. Go to the next fight. It was Sergey Spivak versus Cyril Gane. Me and my dude Finesse here, both on Cyril Gane in that spot. And Cyril Gane gets the job done. Once again, using the lateral movement side to side. Avoiding the takedowns. Now, when I look at Fiziev, he's more of a Muay Thai striker. Is this guy out on the outside constantly moving laterally? No, not necessarily. He's going to be in the pocket. He's going to look for these big knockout blows, which he's definitely capable of. I do see a path for Fiziev early. I think the later this fight goes, the more dirty it gets, the more it's going to favor Gamrot, though. I've seen, you could say he knocked out RDA late in the fight, but I've seen Fiziev slow, even in 3-round fights versus Bobby Green. I was there for that scrap, and it was a close fight, man. And that's the theme, I feel like, with Rafael Fiziev. He's in a lot of close fights. If he's not getting these big early knockouts or getting knocked out himself, this is, a common theme for him. He's in these close fights, and you could say, he beat Justin Gaethje, but hell, 2 of the 3 judges, I believe, didn't see it that way, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. You can't be in these close fights. Like they say it all the time, especially nowadays. Don't leave it to the judges. So, you know, I think if Gamrot's able to get his grappling going here, this could be a rough night for Fiziev. And kind of, I think in the heart of hearts, I just want to see a grappler beat a striker on paper. Grappler versus striker match. Just in my heart of hearts, being a grappler, I want to see it get done. And I think this is the spot. I think if Fiziev isn't able to stifle him with the movement, he's gonna have to knock him out, throw strikes up the middle, really stop Gamrot from wanting to shoot. And Gamrot's going to shoot. He's going to keep shooting. This guy shot 20 plus takedowns in fights, a style we've seen work for guys like Merab Dvalishvili in a bantamweight division. I definitely think it could translate here to the 155 as well. This is a guy who's been invited to ADC championships, albeit he lost to Gary Tonin in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. They did him no favors with that bracket, huh?
For sure. But hey, the dream was true for him for until that heel hook got sunk in. That's another thing. This guy's diverse in his submission attempts. He'll go for heel hooks. The scrambles in his last few fights were crazy. Like Dariush is a high level black belt, bro. Armis Aryukian, amazing grappler. And with all that being said, I think this is the highest level of grappling that Fiziev has faced. I will also mention on the other side that I believe this is the best striker, bar none, that Gamrot has faced on the other end. So be careful because this dude, Fiziev, his kicks are like whips. He's going to go low. He's going to go high. But I just think at some point, Gamrot's going to be able to get a hold of him. It's not going to be like the Aljamain fight where this dude just can't be tracked. Aljamain rushes in, makes a mistake. Same with Spivak. This dude just flat-footed as fuck. Don's just moving around him. He has no idea what to do. So that being said, I think once Gamrot gets a hold, he's going to be able to add up minutes. Even if Fiziev's able to get back to the feet, he's gonna get put back down, in my opinion. And you can say on paper, yes, I do believe Fiziev has great takedown defense and good get-ups, but I just don't think it's first, the level of grapplers. Like that being said, so on the other end, he's getting dropped by Dariush, right? But it's MMA. Dariush has the grappling, so he wasn't able to go to that constantly down the well. But man, Fiziev could put a hurting on him as well. So
and dude, that left hand from Jesus Christ, you just said his name. My word, Beneil. That left hand from Beneil is one of the hardest punches in the history of MMA, dude. It lands like a thud. It goes like a gunshot went off, and Gamrot hits the ground wrestling. Like he literally is not even dazed. It's crazy, dude. I feel like he has one of the best chins I've ever seen in MMA. And I know that he's getting dropped in these fights, but like chin is different than getting dropped. Like you can get dropped, but some people get dropped and they never look the same. Some people get touched with a punch and they're still upright, but they're like wobbling. They look like they're not there. Like the lights are on, but nobody's home. Gamrot, like somebody's always home. Like you can hit this guy with a sledgehammer. He's just like, all right, and wrestle. Like it's crazy. And I was saying on my show earlier, it's about conditioning. The reason he could do that is because he comes in insane shape, because there's no other way. You take these damaging shots and just continue to come forward. So I think he could lose here. He could definitely, be in some bad situations, but I feel like you got to kill the guy. And like people are talking like he's easy to knock out. No, he's been hurt before, but he's never been knocked out. And you look on the other side, Fiziev has been knocked out in the UFC by Magomed Mustafayev, who doesn't fight anymore. So again, it's not like I'm saying he's the better striker. I'm just saying he's not a 0% to knock out Fiziev on the feet. Like he's less likely. You'd certainly say it's way more like, but it's 155 pounds. These are two guys that have some power that are going to swing. And Gamrot has knocked people out in the UFC. Nobody was saying, Scott Holtzman's a dead man walking, but he got hit with the power of Gamrot and he died. So it's like, again, I'm not saying it's apples to apples. I'm just saying it's a fight. At the end of the day, Gamrot does throw punches. They're not the best ones you've ever seen, but he does it with full commitment, and then he throws a takedown behind it. So I think it's going to be a great scrap. And I never try and oversimplify. I don't think he's dead to rights on the feet with this guy either. I think Fiziev should certainly be a favorite there. He's better. He's faster. But he's not the only one that can throw hands and do damage. And by the way, Justin Gaethje last fight busted up his leg, slowed him down a little bit, and then used a simple jab to turn his face into lunch meat. So I felt like that was a little bit for me a wake-up call. Like, I love Fiziev, but like maybe the striking isn't what I thought it was. If we're not taking out Gaethje, if we're not closing the show there, it just was a little bit alarming to me because Gaethje didn't force him into those other realms. He just kept it where he wanted it, and he lost that fight closely, but cleanly. So it's just like, damn.
What about Bobby Green, bro? I was there for that fight. I thought Bobby Green won, and that was a striking matchup.
I bet Bobby.
So I know my man Finesse the Books is itching to talk. I
Let
think
us have
Gamrot's
it,
gonna
brother.
be wrestling all night. Go for it, my man. Why is he not gonna get wrestled? Why is Fiziev gonna win the fight?
Yeah, I think I told you who I'm. I think I told you who I'm on already.
You're itching. He's itching to get it on. So let him go. Let him go,
I mentioned to say something else too, Liam. I want to make a quick point. So, and respectfully too, right? Respectfully, always respectfully. I like reading the chat, right? Because Liam likes to say you got the sharpest chat in the game, and I tend to agree with that. So, reading the chat, this kid Tajiki, whatever his name is, every time I see your name, you want some hating ass shit. Whether it's on Twitter, you want some hating ass shit, bro. So I hope you have a better day. Okay, thanks for watching. That's for you right there. Thanks for watching, baby. Yeah, just be better, right? We don't lend to that negativity shit. Sit here, take the info. If you don't want it, so be it. But respectfully too, always respectfully. Anyways, back to the fights, and I'm gonna take extra long just for my man Tajiki. I'm gonna take extra long.
Yeah, go with your slow voice, brother. So
yeah. So what I'll be relatively quick. So I'm on an island on this panel. I like Fiziev, and I feel a lot of the same things that I do about the last fight. Right, we got some similarities. Grappler versus striker for the most part. I also feel like Fiziev is going to stop Gamrot, just like I feel like Danny Ige is going to stop Bryce Mitchell. I don't know what it is. I actually do know what it is, and I'll kind of explain it. So Fiziev obviously won 6 of his last 7 fights. Lost the last fight to Gaethje, as you guys kind of broke down. Kickboxing, Muay Thai background, extremely dangerous on the feet. The durability, the proven cardio, good level of competition, and that elite takedown defense. I'm hearing a lot of people this week talk about the unknowns with Fiziev off his back. Is he a fish? Is he not a fish? And the fact of the matter is, he just hasn't given us an opportunity to witness that. His takedown defense is so good. So I think they have it at like 93, 94% takedown defense. But I think it's even a little bit better than that. They credited RDA with 2 takedowns. First one was not a takedown. I think I took him down, slammed him in the 4th round. That's a takedown. But in my book, it's 1 for 16 on takedowns. And you guys mentioned that RDA is a different matchup. Right, he wants to wrestle. That's his base, but he mixes the striking a lot better with the wrestling than Gamrot does. Right, that can be pros and cons. Right, Gamrot's a lot more aggressive, maybe slightly more technical with the offensive wrestling game. But I think there are some advantages to mixing in the striking with the takedowns as well. And that's something that I don't think Gamrot does super well. Fiziev hasn't really faced many guys besides RDA that just want to wrestle. RDA pretty much spammed the takedowns in that fight. There were some exchanges. Fiziev, I think, won most of those exchanges, but to get even in a 5-round fight, a little over 4 rounds to shoot 16 times is a lot. The closest stylistic matchup, like I said, which I think was RDA. I have Fiziev 3-1 going into the 5th round. His cardio held up. There was a lot of question marks about his cardio. Still are. I'm seeing a lot of people questioning his cardio, but to go 4+ rounds at that pace. And to finish RDA, who's not easily finishable in the 5th round with that devastating left hook, really impressed me. I was really impressed by that. So, what else do I have? I just think Fiziev has the tools to slow Gamrot down, whether it's the calf kick, whether that's the front kicks, the knees up the middle, the flying knees that he loves. Extremely good balance too, right? I think that's a big part of his takedown defense.
Great point.
You guys mentioned that Gamrot likes the low singles, the high singles. And Fiziev has the best balance, one of the best balances that I've seen in the division. So and we saw that in the RDA fight. RDA got really deep a couple of times, but never really got close to finishing the takedown except in the 4th round. So Gamrot's not a potent finisher, and I think you guys mentioned that as well, especially at the UFC level. I just trust Fiziev versus a one-dimensional fighter. I don't rate Gamrot striking at all. He throws looping shots to kind of close the range, like a lot of wrestlers like to do. I think Gamrot has to be relatively perfect for 25 minutes in this fight. I don't think you're going to get we haven't really seen Fiziev on his back too much, but I don't expect Fiziev doesn't seem like the type to lay on his back for 4 or 5 straight minutes. So, I don't think Fiziev back hitting the mat is the end of the fight. Fiziev has been in there with some killers and some great finishers, and has only got finished once. And that was kind of a mean KO. I think it was the spinning back kick, I think, right? I think Fiziev even had his guard up and it still kind of split his guard and knocked him down. So, Gamrot's an amazing grappler, but personally, Liam, I think you said it. I think you rated his offensive wrestling pretty high. I really don't, and I may be wrong, but I think once he gets in those scramble and grappling situations, top of the top, elite. But in terms of just pure offensive grappling, I don't rate him that high. Credited for a bunch of takedowns that weren't takedowns. We saw that in the Turner fight, the Sarukian fight, the Dariush fight. I don't think he has the most elite top control. So, yeah. Benil beat Gamrot, fought to a split decision with Turner. I know that was on late notice. I think 10 days, maybe something like that. I think one of you guys pointed that out. But, I don't rate Turner high. He's not on an elite level in my mind. Sarukian was fighting a great fight and just kind of ran out of steam in the 4th and 5th rounds and kind of got beat up in the 4th and 5th rounds, but that fight was up in the air. So I think this is a huge test for Gamrot. I think Gamrot is kind of due to get finished. That sounds weird, even kind of saying it, but he gets hurt in every fight. Jalen Turner had him rocked multiple times. You guys mentioned the Benil fight. Benil flattened him. And he, his recoverability's been there. His durability's been there, but I think it's about that time, right? What, 18th pro fight, I think, for I may be off on that. Correct me if
24,
I'm wrong.
I think it's 24.
24
or it's 25th. Excuse me. That's what I should say.
Yeah,
he's
and never been finished. We see him getting rocked over and over and over again. Never been finished. I think that time is tomorrow, boys, or today. Now I think that time is today. So maybe a little bit of a hot take, but I think we're rounding out this card with 2 finishes, and I like Fiziev at the -140, -145 price. Give me Fiziev in the main event. Great fight, amazing matchmaking. But yeah, give me Fiziev in the main event.
Hell yeah, and I love it. Stand by the courage of your convictions, my man. You got to read, come in, give your read. That's all you can do. That's all we can ever ask. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming in with a thoughtful response as well. So as far as I'm concerned on this fight, here's my fan fiction for the RDA fight. Because again, we saw what happened, right? We saw how it played out. But the thing that I question is if we see a takedown here, from Gamrot and it's in round 4, does he get back up? Because I did see RDA get that takedown and he was sitting against the fence and these kind of things. Here was the reason I was so confident on Fiziev against RDA. He's young. And I was just like, eventually, dude, the bill comes due. You're talking about like a guy like Gamrot, 32 years of age, 24 professional fights. Eventually, that bill is coming due. He will be badly knocked out in the UFC. No doubt about it. Mark my words. But if it doesn't happen, then I do think to myself, like, Gamrot has some upside to get that finish in rounds 4 and 5. I do think in the early going, he's not going to be finishing a guy like Fiziev. He's too slick. He's too balanced, to your point. Like, he's not a guy that gets out of position much in the wrestling and grappling until he tires. And so you look, and he was doing a good job quad potting, keeping his back against the fence, a lot of the right things. But I also just feel like you give Gamrot those same opportunities. He's young. Like, he's 32. That's similar age. Like, these guys are virtual age parity. He's got a little bit more professional experience, nothing crazy. But I just think, like, if he has those same opportunities, RDA wasn't physical enough because he's cutting a lot to 155, and he was too old to sustain it for the pace over time. Whereas I feel like Fiziev, he's kind of the opposite. Like, to your point, Arman Sarukian, dude, nobody wants to fight this guy. Nobody's taking that fucking call. He's like a -1,000 last time out against a, top 20 guy, top 25 guy. And you're just like, all right, I look at this and I'm like, a guy like Fiziev is a brutal finisher. He's got all the skills in the world. And I agree with you that he was up 3-1. But I think that was like, it showed that was a fight he called for, by the way. He said, let's find out who the better Rafael is. And I thought it was more competitive than I expected it to be as a Fiziev backer. So then I'm just like, let's see what happens in this Gamrot fight. And I could be wrong, but I want to play into the upside of a guy who's going to try again, who's younger, and who can also last better on the feet. RDA in his prime, at his very best, got knocked out several times at 155 pounds. Jeremy Stevens almost separated him, from head, cranium, off the shoulders, right? Like, hit him with an uppercut from south of Hades. He's never had the best chin at 155. But you look at this guy, and I think he does have a great chin. And until proven otherwise, I'm going to keep relying on that. So for me, dog or pass situation, but a hell of a damn fight. And I do lean towards the over. That was the other thing I said this week. I said I could see a late finish for Gamrot. I just don't think they're super high percentage. I think more often than not, this fight hits the scorecards. I think they're both too sound at what they do. I think they're both hard to finish. Yeah, go ahead.
No, one question I wanted to ask you though, do you think Fiziev's going to come out a little bit stronger for the finish due to like, the last fight, you could say like oh no, he won the last fight. No, Gaethje won the last fight, right? I can't remember now for some reason. Gaethje won the last fight, but he, people were saying it's kind of robbery. It was a close fight. He gets screwed by the judges. Might he come out a little bit more aggressive for the finish here in a spot?
Very possible. So maybe that'll keep me off the over. And
I
I'll
just
either
wonder.
bet the
That's
dog or
what
I'll
I'm
pass entirely. I feel like this is a great fight, right? And I do think that Gamrot is the best submission grappler that Fiziev's faced in the UFC as well, which I don't think people are talking about as much. Do you know how hard it is to submit a fucking Beneil Dariush or these? It's not happening. It's like that's simply not going to happen unless you're Michael Chiesa and you got a silver spoon up your ass or whatever Brock Lesnar said that one time. But when you look, like, by and large, it's just not happening against these super high level guys he's going against. But Fiziev, for all of his strengths and for everything that he's so good at, this is potentially the one area where he's unknown. Because nobody was able to put him there. Sometimes the answer is, yeah, nobody was able to put him there, and it was better than we expected. It's like sometimes nobody was able to put him there, and then when they do put him there, people are like, holy shit, that's what it looks like. So that's the one thing for me where I'm like, you could see one guy look like a minus 300 favorite in this spot, and he's plus 125 pre-fight. He could look like a plus 500, but I'm saying there's a path to him looking minus 300 here. He's the underdog. It's an elite lightweight fight. All my signals are saying it's got to be a dogger pass, but hell of a freaking fight. Boys,
And
we have gone marathon style on this breakdown. I appreciate the shit out of you guys for rocking with us this whole time. If either one of you guys just clicked out at one point and was like, fuck this guy, I would have totally understood. It's been a blast. I am still rocking at 3 a.m. I don't think there's another soul alive in this house, so I'm probably a dick. And so I'm going to now call it. I want to just give you guys an opportunity. If you have anything left to get off your chest, go ahead and do that. But also, please let the people know where they could find you. And thank you both very much because it was a freaking blast, and both welcome to come on, chop it up anytime. Starting with our guy, JB. We'll kick it to you, brother.
Okay, go to me because I think Finesse got something to say for the last part of the fight. But I will just make it. I'll make it super quick. You can follow me on Instagram at MMA Jewish Bettor. My eyes are bleeding right now. It's 2 a.m. where I'm at. But goddamn, I feel tired as hell. I think at certain points in the breakdown, I might have lost it. I had to ask what a fight was. Somebody in the comments is going to take that personally and seriously. So I just got to mention it right now. It's a joke, guys. And please stop hating on my man Finesse the Books in the comments. Like, it's just not cool anymore. So Tajik Bey, I know you're a troll. I've identified you already as a troll. So I wouldn't take it too serious. But come on, give my man some love here. We don't need all that trolling in the comments over here. We just did a 3-hour breakdown. It's all cool here.
Facts. Finesse, let them know. Have your piece. I'm always cool with you cutting a promo too. If you got something to say, let it off your chest, my man. You're all good here.
No, sir. Positivity always. You know what I'm saying? I probably shouldn't even mention this dickhead, but it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? All positive vibes over here. Liam, last time I was on the show, same exact thing came up. I'm never one to plug myself. If you guys want to find me, I'm on Twitter right there, easy enough. I'm always just going to use whatever time I have, whatever time the host gives me to give you guys your flowers. Like I always say, Liam's working on his day off, man is on vacation in a basement somewhere, doing 3-hour breakdowns for the people. So there's nothing more than you love to see than that. So it is not easy capping fights every single week. I think UFC's been on a 15, 16 straight week run, something like that, every single Saturday. So it is not easy. So yeah, I appreciate you. I'm sure there's a ton of other people out there that appreciate you. So yeah, thank you for putting this together. Always, right? 2-3 shows a week, right? The man is consistent. JB, we're connecting a lot more as of recently. I've told you before, I was a fan before anything, watching your content and stuff like that. So yeah, shout out to you boys. Not the most exciting card, right, name-wise, but we got 11 fights to make a shit ton of money on, and I think that's what's going to happen. So shout out to you boys. Get some rest. We got a big day tomorrow.
Absolutely.
You guys want to break over the 21 Bellator fights now? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get started right now. We'll keep it going. Marathon live stream. We're going until the fight start. All right. So everybody fire away questions, but I'm playing, guys. Thank you all for your time as well. Always want to be, giving you guys valuable information. I think we tried to do that as very best we could. Gave you guys multiple different angles. So hopefully, whether you're with us or against us, tailing or fading, you come away feeling better prepared. To have some bets, and also hope you enjoyed the banter, guys. It's a fun show where we have a little bit of lively conversation. We shoot the breeze. There's no freaking time limits and all this stuff. We kind of just let it flow. I had a blast. I hope you did too. And if you're a fight fan, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, because to my guy Finesse's point, we are here doing this very frequently. These are guests that you'll see on the show again, but also we have rotating panels of guests. I do some solo content as well. A lot of different things. If you're looking, that's what we have here. So God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. Make sure that you bet legally, responsibly, within your means. Have a great time doing it. And always come back next time, because we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.